All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Howell Township Mayor and Council's workshop and combination regular meeting. The time is 6:35, January 16th. I would please ask that the appropriate opening statement and roll call be read.
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this regular meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner: by the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on January 1, 2000. Of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press, Tri-Town News, and Star Ledger for publication on January 1, 2007. By the filing of a copy of said former notice in the Township Clerk's office on January 1, 2007. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows. Upon exit in the meeting room, to the rear they are to your immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room at the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Roll call, Mrs. Dalton. Here. Mr. Howell.
Here.
Mrs. Showmaker.
She should be here momentarily.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mayor DeBella.
Here. Okay, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, obviously, when we come out later. Mr. Chunietsky, I understand we have reason to go into closed session. Is that right, sir?
Yes, sir.
And the matters are specifically what?
Litigation, personnel, and attorney-client privilege.
Okay. I would ask that the appropriate statement please be read then for executive session.
Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public shall not be excluded from any meeting of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting. Whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and that the Township Council will reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and circumstance under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time.
Okay, we need a motion and a second, please.
I make a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any remarks? Okay, hearing none. Roll call, please, on executive.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, just let the record reflect it's approximately 6:37, and we anticipate to be completed by 8 p.m. Is that right, Mr. Chunietsky? 7:30. I'm sorry, 7:30? Okay, terrific. We'll adjourn till then. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to reconvene the meeting to order. What the time or record reflected is approximately 7:40. We're reconvening the Howell Township Mayor and Council's workshop and regular meeting agenda. We started at 6:30 and have been in closed session until this time. We've already read the appropriate statements. I'd ask that everyone please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would ask that we all just please remain standing for a moment of silent observation in thought of the many troops defending this country all over the world. Thank you. Okay, just call the council's attention to acceptance of minutes, Article 4. There are minutes from the May 16, May 23rd executive session, minutes from the December 5 workshop meeting and executive session, and December 19 regular meeting and executive session. I'd ask for a motion, please. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I make a motion to accept May 23rd. I was absent for May 16th.
Mr. Walsh, were you here for all those meetings? Do you know?
Yes, he was.
I believe I was, yes. I went away in May, but I believe it was the first
Okay.
weekend in May.
We-
It's only you and I.
It would only, yeah, apparently Mrs. Showmaker was not at one of them, In this case, Mr. Bongiovanni, if two of us are eligible to vote, is that satisfactory? It is, okay. Perhaps, Mr. Walsh, since you were at all of them and I was at all of them, could you make the motion? Unless there's a reason to want to vote. Mr. Shoemaker, do you have a preference that we have to vote separately on the one you were at? Okay, why don't we just do it all in one, if you'd be willing to entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we accept the minutes from executive session from May 16th and 23rd, and from December workshop meeting of December 5th.
And the 19th for regular meeting and executive?
Yes, so the 19th also for executive session.
All right, I'm going to step down momentarily as chair to second that motion. Are there any comments or remarks with respect to those items?
I know I'm not eligible to vote on it, but I do not believe I was present on December 5th, so that's got to be.
Okay, so under comments, if we could just please correct the record that Ms. Dalton was not in attendance at December 5. Any other comments or corrections? Okay, hearing none, roll call please on the motion.
Mrs. Dalton?
I need to abstain.
Mr. Howell?
I need to abstain.
Mrs. Shoemaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, we're going to move to hearing of citizens. We do have a sign-in sheet. I don't know, if someone could just grab that, please, and bring it on up.
Mayor, I'm sorry, there were reports of township officials.
I apologize, I'm moving too fast. There are reports of township officials. Mr. Chinyetsky, we'll start with you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. First, under discussions, if we can add to that so as not to take up this early time while the residents are waiting, a discussion on setting dates for some budget hearings.
Okay?
If we do that under discussion. And at this time, Mayor, I would like to ask Mr. Rubenstein and Mr. Linehan, the tax assessor, Mr. Rubenstein of Realty Appraisal, to give us a report on the progress of the revaluation.
Okay, gentlemen, if you're here, why don't you come on up, please? As you approach, we've spoken with both individuals previously, but if you don't mind, just make sure both microphones are on. The red light should be on, and if you could please just introduce yourself, who you're with, obviously, for the benefit of the public. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, sir. My name is Tom Linehan. I work in the capacity of assessor for the Township of Howell.
Mr. Linehan, good evening.
Neil Rubenstein, good evening, partner with the firm of Realty Appraisal Company, the firm doing the revaluation here.
Okay. It's my understanding, Mr. Chinyetsky, you wanted these two gentlemen to give the governing body and the community an update with respect to the revaluation. Is that right?
Correct. We met earlier with Mr. Linehan. We went over some key points, sort of tried to get a sense of how the informal meetings were going, and a number of other points of information that the council and the general public might find useful. And I believe Mr. Rubenstein's ready to kick off the report. Or
Okay.
Mr.
How much
Linehan.
time do you think you might need, Mr. Rubenstein, just to give ourselves a check here?
5 minutes.
Okay. Mr. Linehan, you have to add on top of that?
No, sir.
Okay. Go right ahead, sir.
Okay. Right now, where we're at is all of the valuations have been completed, all property types, vacant land, residential, farms, and commercial and industrial. As of today, we've mailed the last group of the residential letters to property owners. In today's mail, we put about 1,700 pieces in, and that'll bring the total to 16,100 letters that we've mailed starting about 10 days ago. We stagger the mailing so that we don't mail 16,000 letters simultaneously, and obviously that would be very difficult to handle the volume of calls. In the next couple of days, I anticipate mailing the balance of the letters, the commercial property owners, the farms, and the vacant land properties, which equates to about 2,000 properties, a fraction of the total, but then we will have mailed a notification letter with this flyer, which everybody that owns a home in town that is in the earlier block should have received, and the last group today they'll get in a couple of days. While those letters started to be mailed, we started our informal hearings actually in this room. They started last Thursday, and they will be every day except a couple of days that we couldn't use the room. We have hearings all week this week. There were hearings today. And until we're done mailing letters and responding to property owners' requests for an informal hearing, anybody that gets their letter, there'll be dates on those letters to contact us, We make a specific appointment, for each and every person that wants to talk to us. So far, the calls have been slightly below average in the volume that we thought we would anticipate. Again, we still have to mail about 3,000 more letters, but so far, the response has been better than we expected. The letter basically advises each owner of their new assessment and advises them to how to get in touch with us if they want to come in and talk to us. During that hearing, they'll be able to review their property record card, which is the form that has all of the data that we collected in the inspection. It has the lot size, description of the home, and miscellaneous other bits of data that we will go over with the property owner. We also have a book of sales, every sale that occurred in Howell Township in the last year, with a color photograph of that home, obviously by area, so that we're dealing with developments or condominiums. We're showing property owners what actual homes transacted in that time frame and how we arrived at our value. The hearing is also for anybody to talk to us about something. They may not feel our assessment is fair, or they may feel it's fair, they just want to review the record. If we didn't inspect the property during our normal inspections, by the way, we got into about 90% of the interiors of all the homes in Howell Township, but if somebody comes in and we didn't do an interior inspection, we'll make an appointment and go out probably that day and do the interior inspection, and that may result in a change to the assessment. Once that hearing is over, or all the hearings are over, and the assessor is satisfied with the result of those changes or lack of change, we will file our assessment rolls with the Monmouth County Board of Taxation, and then the assessor will certify the book for the revaluation for next year.
Mr. Linehan, anything you can add on how things are going with our residents and typical questions, concerns, issues that have come up to your office?
I believe, as Mr. Rubenstein indicated, actually, the response that we've been getting, as far as my office is concerned, has been quite light, as far as phone calls are concerned. I've been very pleased as far as apparently the acceptance of it. I do have some concerns, however, though they will be addressed as far as the hearings are concerned.
Okay.
Tom, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Linehan, perhaps you can just give a brief review on the percentage breakdowns in terms of total valuation of the town.
What we did actually is I had Mr. Rubenstein actually prepare an impact study as far as the rateable base is concerned. In '06 actually, the percentage of residential properties was at 82%. This year, as far as '07 is concerned, it's still at 82%. The commercials were at 12% of the total rateable base. And as far as '07 is concerned, they remain at 12% as far as the total rateable base is concerned. We estimated a tax rate of $1.90. That was predicated upon some projections. However, though, after we've done our homework, as far as the total rateable base is concerned, we believe that it might be a little bit lower than that.
If I could just one footnote to that, just so it's clear. We estimated a rate in the letter and tried to describe that has no budget in that rate. That is what the rate would have been, let's say, of course, with Howell, I think you have 5 different tax rates.
For 06.
We took the average of those rates. We know what the total ratables before the revaluation were about $2.9 billion before we started. We're now in about $6.8 billion. You take those two numbers, and we know what last year's budget was because that's how the rate was derived. We divide those two, and that's where we came to the $1.90. We did that about 6 weeks ago because we wanted to start the process. Howell Township is a large town. We couldn't wait to finish every last assessment or valuation to start the hearings because we have deadlines to meet the county tax board. Their deadline is February 15th for us to file the assessment rolls. So to meet that, we estimated it. Now, fast forward to 2 days ago, we had a more accurate representation of the total ratables because we were done with the commercial properties, the vacant lots, et cetera, and we're at $6.8 billion. And using that number, it would actually equate to a tax rate of $1.82. So again, no budget increase this year. That's what the rate would be. That's the average rate in Howell based upon the average 425 and the $2.9 billion before the revaluation.
Okay, what questions from the council? Ms. Dalton, we'll start with you. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Rubenstein, can you comment on how many, I'm not asking for specific cases, but in general, how many hearings you've had, informal hearings so far, and what the results in general have been?
I never like to answer no to a question, but they only started last Thursday. I think we've had maybe 200 or so property owners come in. When they're done, or as they're close to being done, we keep a log sheet of every property owner that comes in, the time they came in, if they came in. Some people make the appointment and then change their mind, and we actually supply that to the assessor so we can see how many people in the town came in. It's a gauge to see whether people are typically satisfied or not. In past history, we usually get about 10% of the town that come into this process, and this is just the first step. It's just an informal hearing with a representative from my firm. If anybody is dissatisfied or doesn't feel they got what they wanted, they can always file a county tax appeal, which is a more formal process. That's filed in Freehold at the Monmouth County Board of Taxation. That deadline is not until April 1st. So this is just the first step to meet with us. And the results, I would never sit and say we don't make any mistakes, but if somebody comes in and reviews their card and we didn't do the inspection, as I said, we'll run out and take a look. There was an easement on the property that we were unaware of, wasn't on the tax map. We'll make a change. It's not a, hey, we're right and you're wrong position, but about 50% of the property owners that come in don't receive a change. It's a home that we inspected and we did it correctly. It is certainly not about somebody coming in and basically just saying, hey, you guys don't know what you're doing. We don't change the assessment. We're trying to, the basic goal of the revaluation is to try to get tax equalization amongst all properties. So if we feel we've achieved that, we certainly don't want to unachieve it by reducing somebody's assessment that is not warranted.
Okay. Mr. Howell, any questions?
Well, I had the opportunity to be in Town Hall last week on 2 different dates, and I spoke to a few residents that were coming out of the process, and they all conveyed to me that they were very satisfied with what went on when they were in here speaking with the people from your firm. There were a couple where there were some mistakes, and the individuals from your firm had no problem correcting those mistakes. You know, and it seemed to me that the people who did come in here and had the opportunity to speak with your representatives were very satisfied.
Great.
So I would like to thank you for that, because it's obviously a very stressful time for all the residents. And I'll be able to tell you more about it at the next meeting, because my appointment's tomorrow morning at 10:30.
Uh-oh. I better mark that. I think I can remember your last name.
Mr. Walsh, any comments or questions, sir?
Your company's done many of these in the past, correct, sir?
We were started in 1951 by my grandfather. We're the oldest firm in the state, and we've done over 340 revaluations solely in the state of New Jersey. We did a prior revaluation here, not the last one, but it was 2 ago in, I think, the early 80s. I was not involved with that one, but it's all we do, and yes, we've done it for a long time.
As far as the commercial, what percentage is, it's still 12% of the 6.8 billion, is that correct?
Correct, sir.
So 12% would be approximately 840 million?
828,428,000.
Okay. In the past, with a lot of the revaluations you've done, a lot of the commercial reassessed people, do they,
Typically, that
File
percentage
appeals?
goes down.
excuse me?
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to ask about the percentage. Do they? Yes. I shouldn't say a lot, but there are certain companies that have tax reps where their job is to appeal, whether they feel the assessment is accurate or not. So we're going to get tax appeals. We're going to get residential appeals, and we're going to get commercial. The market, the real estate market, is in somewhat of a state of flux. Our date of value for Howell Township is October 1st, 2006. I think I explained that at the last meeting that I was here. That date is basically frozen in time, and that's the date of value for every assessment in Howell Township. But in our contract with Howell is included 2 years of county board defense at no additional charge. So any property owner, any commercial property that files at the county, we're there at no cost to the municipality to defend that appeal.
Just let you know, Mr. Walsh, I believe where you're driving the increase as far as residential properties is concerned was 2.3. The increase in the commercial base actually was 2.34. So they both not equally the same.
2.3%?
Correct, sir.
2.3 times.
2.3 times what they originally were before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, is it safe to say that more commercial as a percentage will appeal than residential? Is that safe to say?
No, it's probably more residential than commercial, just because in
I
Howell
mean
you have...
percentage. I don't
I'm
mean
sorry,
the actual-
percentage?
Of course, there's 16,000 residential versus
Yes.
500.
2,000. Okay, is that how many you said, 2,000, because there was 18,000?
No, there's 500 commercial properties.
500 commercial. So as a percentage, much higher percentage of commercial will appeal than residential?
You know what, I really don't know. In the past, we don't really track the breakdown between the commercial. The commercial obviously can be more expensive in defense because they're more complicated, not for us, but for if they go to the tax court. But probably not. I would say that it would be about equal between the residential and commercial as a percentage.
And if the commercial ends up coming down, then because of the equalization, the residential part component will have to go up. Is that correct?
Well, in a revaluation, we're all at 100%, so there's really not equalization. But yes, anybody that comes down would have to be made up by the rest of the property owners, which is why we fight hard to retain the assessments on all property types. When we're done with the revaluation, if there was a recent sale or something that we didn't know, that would be a different case. But like we have the informal hearing, we don't want to change the assessment. When we have a tax appeal, we strive to win that appeal. And we're pretty good at it.
Okay, so they have till April 1st?
April 1st is the deadline to file a county or a tax court appeal.
I had made a recommendation to have a special meeting. I'm not sure how the rest of the council and the mayor feel about that. But something else I would like to add, I think maybe we should, if we could we go to some of the senior places here in Howell? Because they have a tough time getting out, especially this time of year. Like Surrey Downs, the Villages, over on Friendship Road. Is that a possibility?
You mean to hold their hearings not here?
Yes.
We had a request from only one complex to do that, and I spoke to the manager there and explained that it's not the simplest thing to do because the records are here. We'd have to transport. We have a tax map here, the sales books, so we'd have to not have hearings here. We can't do them simultaneously. There's only one set of backup data that exists, and that's one tax map, which is about 160 pages, and we utilize that in the hearing process. But I had offered, I think there was one resident at this one complex, and I cannot remember the name, that was in a wheelchair, and they said she would have a tough time getting here, so we told I would do her hearing over the telephone. But basically, the informal hearing is for security reasons, would be better here, to perform them here. The records are computerized, but we typically don't want to travel them around too far. There's 12 legal boxes upstairs locked away, and I think it'd be safer to do them here.
As a compromise, could we potentially, through the manager's office, talk with our senior center to see if we could make the senior bus available, maybe with an advertisement in the clubhouses at Surrey Downs and the Villages and what have you, for those that might not have access to transportation, that the senior busing would make a special pickup to potentially bring them here and bring them home. If you're saying that we can't do it outside this building, can that be operationalized, Mr. Chunietsky? You might want to just lean toward the...
I will look into it. They make, people make different appointments at different times, so there might be some issue with trying to get everyone coordinated so we can get a group over at a time.
Well, I could pick a day. If that could potentially work, I could pick one specific day, because we make appointments, and I'll have them all on that morning. It would take some, planning, but we can try to accommodate that.
All right. To Mr. Walsh's point, which I think we all agree with, could you and perhaps through the manager make those accommodations for particularly all of the senior restricted living, restricted age housing would be a big help.
Just as a footnote, we mailed those letters first. They were the first letters to go January 2nd, so they've had the letters for a long time. And yes, I can do that.
I think what you also may find, because I've gotten emails from some of them, a lot of them are away, and they don't return until warmer climate, if you will. So hopefully you'll be able to do some of those telephonically. Some of these folks just can't get back from Florida to do this now.
We have that in every town every year, but statutorily we have to be done by February 10th. So I certainly think that is a valid excuse not to come into the hearing here because they're not in the state.
Right.
But yes, we'll always, 2 years from now, if somebody calls us to discuss their assessment, we'll talk to somebody about their assessment. At that point in time, though, I won't have the ability to change the assessment. It can only be changed by the assessor or by appeal.
Okay, what else, Mr. Walker?
It's good, thank you.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
Mrs. Showmaker, any questions or comments?
I think everything's been answered in light of the time, Mayor.
The only comment, I just want to publicly again acknowledge Mr. Lenahan and his office. This is a very stressful time for people that work in his department under his leadership, and I certainly want to extend my congratulations to you for having gotten us to this point. It is certainly a tumultuous time, and you're a real you're a strength to this municipality, and I want to personally thank you, I know on everyone's behalf, for the effort you and your team have done. So if you'd please extend our appreciation to the members of your department as well, we would appreciate it.
I will do that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Chansky, for these gentlemen?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. What else do you have, Mr. Chinesky?
Mayor, just one other item to note. We want to pick up where we left off with the neighborhood traffic study policy. The police department is finishing up their review. I'd made a number of changes that council members put in the margins of that policy, and at our next meeting, I'll have it under the manager's report to review more fully under a PowerPoint presentation, but it's in your revised policies in your package this evening.
When, Mr. Chinesky, do you want to schedule giving the council some time to review that? When would you like to put it on for a discussion?
For our meeting on this February 6th, I believe.
Okay. Any questions or comments on that? We'll talk about traffic, the traffic calming report, February 6th. Is that enough time for everybody? Okay. Sure. What's next?
That's it.
Okay, reports of township officials. Mr. Bongiovanni, anything for public from your office?
No, there's been
Just one thing, if you would, sorry, you'll get used to it.
there have been, there's new litigation that's been filed, but nothing to be discussed at this time.
Okay. All right, Ms. Dalton, we'll start with you. Anything under reports?
I just need to get a chance to get my druthers, nothing this week, thanks.
Okay. Mr. Howell, sir, the floor is yours.
Yeah, man, just quick. I know you received the email, and we all did, and the manager did, about the vandalism that occurred at the 9/11 Memorial on Newton's Corner Road. I would just ask anybody in the township that hears anything about the individual or the individuals who defaced that memorial to please call the Howell Police Department and give them any information at all that you can. Also, my wife and I, as well as the deputy mayor and his wife, had the opportunity to attend the dedication ceremony for the auditorium at Howell High School. The auditorium was named after the music director, Mr. Goswich, who unfortunately passed away last January. The people in this township and in this district, for the high school district, can be very proud of the children that attend those programs, as well as the teachers who instruct those children. The level of dedication shown by the teachers and the enormous talent that was on that stage the other evening, it's mind-blowing to see people come back for this dedication ceremony. One of the individuals that came back just won an Emmy Award, and it was the funny point of the evening was Mr. Goswich wasn't sure if this individual was good enough to be in the play. 4 years later, he's winning an Emmy Award. There were the other individuals who came back, just the dancers, the singers. It was incredible just to watch what went on that stage. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Mrs. Showmaker, under reports?
I have No reports, but just one quick comment to Tom. I don't want to forget to start setting the dates for the budget hearings. You'd mentioned that, and we kind of blew over that.
He asked us to put it on for discussion, so I added it to, on the agenda under discussion. We'll do that first. Anything else, Ms. Showmaker?
No.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes, a few things. I also was there Saturday night with Mr. Howell and my wife, and it was one of the nicest nights I've spent in Howell Township in 13 years, watching all the young talent that had graduated from the school and a lot of the young talent that's still there, and how proud they were of their teacher. I think it was really a great night. I was really taken back by it. When the one young man was dancing, I remember in my youth, Alexander Goodenough, I think, was a great dancer. That's what he reminded me of. He kind of leaped 4 feet in the air and ended up 10 feet away. I was saying, I don't know about that, but it was a great night. As liaison to the Recreation Committee, I had the honor of going to the meeting last week, the first one of the year. I was only able to stay a while, but they're really doing a lot of work over there, and a lot of residents of the town are giving their heart and soul to try to improve the recreation quality here in this town. And Councilman Malave came, which was great to see. Going to continue doing a lot of the work that he's been part of for the last 4 years with the recreation. He was very happy to be there. It was nice to see him. A couple of the things that they're working on that are of special interest to me and I wanted to bring up is that the Challenger League for baseball will be starting this year. I've stopped by the Board of Education. I spoke to some members of CPAC, which is an organization for special needs children here in Howell. And the Little League has been trying to do some stuff. I wanted to speak to Mr. Chernetsky. I've been working on your name too, sir, in the last week. Is that it? Chernetsky?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been getting some help.
That's
there.
one version, and that's great.
From a couple Polish friends of mine. I've been working on it. But I want to know if it was possible we can get this on the Township website and application, and something about the Challenger League, if that would be possible.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the Board of Ed will be sending things home to all the special needs children in Howell to see if they'd like to go. There's already, I believe, about 13 young children already registered, and I know of 5 to 6 more. And it'll be a very good thing for the community. Having been involved in it and watching my son play for a few years, it was a great thing watching the community help my son and try to show him how to play softball and be out there on the field with him. Or me and my wife got to sit in the bleachers and enjoy watching him. So, while I'm on the special needs children, there's also something that'll be going on at Howell Bowling Lanes in May, where they'll be renting lanes and they'll be having a special day for autism. That there'll be Saturday, May 19th, 2007, at 11 in the morning. A lot of information will be coming out on that in the next 2 months. There'll be different special needs children playing. There'll also be a lot of businesses assisting in both the financial needs for it, and they'll be there playing also. It should be a nice day. I did have a question about a couple things with the executive minutes that we just approved. I've wanted to ask this question. Did we ever get the money on FEL, Mr. Filiatro?
Yes, we did.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting in the bank? Thank you very much, sir. And the mayor also had given a memo to you, Mr. Chernetsky, back in November about setting up a meeting with the county about open space and farm preservation. He had given that to you back in November. Any luck with setting that up with the county?
We've been working with the open space program on 2 fronts, one with Freewood Acres and then another with on the Harms site to see if we can get some reimbursement for that money, for that acquisition.
Okay.
And we will actually be coming to council with a plan to use some grant funds that were identified in the Green Acres grant.
Okay, because I went to the reorganization meeting for the county also, and one of their main agendas is to preserve more open space in Monmouth County, with Howell being, I believe, the most square miles of any town in Monmouth County. I just think it's something we should stay hot after.
And,
Okay?
I do want to point out for this year, for first time in a couple of years, I understand, we did get a grant from the County Open Space Program. So the plan of having a deputy manager work on a grant program is definitely paying off.
Thank you. And one last thing, I don't know if this has been made public yet, but I wanted to bring it out. I thought it was very indicative of the employees here in Howell Township. Our purchasing agent, Estita Bushkin, she was elected the Vice President of the Government Purchasing Association of New Jersey. I think it's a good thing for Howell Township when individuals that work for this town are given such high regard by their peers and being elected to such positions in the state. I just wanted to tell everybody that. When I read it in my package, I was very happy about that. It's nice to know the quality of some of the people we have working here, and that people around the state recognize the quality of it also. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I just have a few things, Mr. Chansky. One of them is we got correspondence, it's dated January 3rd, and I just wanted to make sure that something was in the works, and it looks like it went to the Shade Tree Commission. We all got a copy that we're getting notice that we obviously have to begin to get our new community forestry management plan in place. And we have obviously until the end of this year, but my suspicion is that there is quite a bit of work that could potentially, God bless you, be involved in this. And I just want to make certain that your office has it, and
Yes,
it's
sir.
been directed to the, will the council get a status report, and will we be engaged in this process?
I think you'll get a good deal more information during our budget process, because it'll require an appropriation to put that in place.
Okay. We also, I got a copy of a letter, and the members of the council were copied on it, from Ms. Rosenberg, who is the planning board liaison from our local Board of Education, and they are expressing being appraised of what's happening with the rezoning, potential rezoning of certain areas in the community, particularly the areas surrounding the Southern School property and the surrounding parcels, as well as, bless you, as well as the inclusion of the Lando Pine School property in the Land Conservation Plan. And what they're basically saying is it's difficult to follow along with these advertisements in the paper, and we don't want to get burned like we did by the Freehold Regional when we were told to check in the fine print detail, and we never found out about the alleged redistricting. But I think they're trying to avoid a similar problem.
Right.
Can we, through your office or whoever it is, just make sure that maybe we give them some time with you or the right person within the municipality to answer their questions?
I spoke with a representative from the office, Mayor, and to understand exactly what the concern was, and we'll make sure to forward a draft of any zoning ordinance that might affect their properties.
The other thing they're asking for, to the extent that it's possible, and I would imagine it is, that, and I don't know what our timeline's going to be with talking about provisions of the master plan, but maybe we could send them a special memo letting them know on the nights it's going to be on the agenda, because I think they're concerned about what's going to happen with respect to growth projections and things of that magnitude.
We'll definitely do that.
Anyone have, is that all right with everybody?
Fine with me, Mayor.
All right. We did get, just to continue to keep the community appraised of the great progress, as Mr. Walsh has pointed out, we did get a 9/11 grant, $65,237. This grant is going to, according to our manager, allow us to upgrade and improve our 9/11 center, which provides dispatch services for police, fire, and EMS. And we will now have, which has been a limitation, we will now have the ability through the new equipment to locate a wireless cell phone call within a 300-foot radius, as opposed to, I guess, some limitation that had been there previous with the cell tower.
Correct.
And having met with at least the fire chiefs previously, that had been an ongoing concern. So certainly our thanks to the right offices. In addition, we did receive a Department of Transportation municipal aid grant for Yellowbrook Road. And in particular, our thanks to Mr. Nunziato and his staff, obviously, and to Miss Lisa Taylor, who's an engineering aide. This $160,000 grant, which we applied for, will help us with a whole number of upgrades and repairs, if you will, to Yellowbrook Road. We on track in the spring to begin to get this teed up?
We'll probably have to supplement that through the budget to get the whole road done. And again, that's something we'll have to talk about during the budget process.
But will the 160, it'll get us way out what the budget is, but we'll be able to use at least the 160 to get something started?
Correct.
Okay. And then finally, I think it's been somewhat reported, although I don't know officially, that we did get $62,000 in grant money from the Monmouth County Open Space Program for Freewood Acres Park.
That's correct.
And this is just a historic achievement. And he's not here tonight, and I think he really was the driving force behind it, and that's Councilman Malave. And I think we really owe him a great deal of gratitude, because he was sitting up here, right where Mrs. Showmaker was, about 3 years ago, and out of the blue, he said, we need a park in Freewood Acres. And he had met with a bunch of residents, and he made it his mission that this would become a reality, and really pushed for it. And I want to extend my thanks to him. He's not here to necessarily enjoy in, obviously, the reward of having seen it go through fruition, but really a great job. And Mrs. Schlegel and her team and all the people that worked on this certainly are to be commended, because according to your memorandum to us, it was a very competitive process. There were a number of very good applicants, and the fact that we got this money was just wonderful. So we'll obviously be asking you for a timeline now in terms of how soon we're going to have this park. So I won't get into it tonight, but my hope is in fairly short order we'll have a project plan and an implementation plan. Is that right?
Yeah. Mayor, I just want to point out, and we're always pleased when staff can do things to get grants, and council is satisfied with that. But in this case, I think a lot of credit is due to the residents who participated in the planning process, because we get a lot of points for participation. And Mr. Williams in the neighborhood, in the Freewood Acres neighborhood, really mustered a lot of residents to come out and participate and write letters in support of the grant. So, and they actually developed the plan. So now we have a plan that we can implement.
So good. So now back to my original question. When are we going to have the plan of when this park's going to be ready?
We are going to start doing this in phases, actually building in phases. So the plan is generally in place now. Now, the next step is we needed to conclude a small acquisition. There were some issues that are more appropriate for closed session that have to be worked out. But once that's in place, we'll start moving quickly.
Does the council agree maybe we'd like a written status report with your anticipated milestones?
Absolutely, Mayor.
Okay.
Be nice.
Okay, we'll look for your report. Anything else on reports? Okay, we're going to open up the meeting to the members of the public. Just let the record reflect it's about 8:25, and we certainly have an agenda we would like to get through, so I would ask if you have something that to contribute or something we can be assistance, when you come up, please let us know what it is you'd like to talk with us about, and we'll certainly attempt to get everyone heard this evening. Mr. Charlie Kaufman, you're first, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Well,
If you would, Mr. Kaufman, just give us your name and address for the record.
Charles Kaufman, 93 Squonkam Yellowbrook Road, Farmingdale. I came originally to talk about the appraisal thing. I'm going to put that aside for a few seconds, and I'll get back to it. But I wanted to tell you, this is the letter that got me here. This is their spotlight on government, and it's from the desk of the mayor. And you talk about holding the line on expenses and so forth, and that's all good. But I'm back here with a recommendation that I approached another council about 5, maybe 6, 7 years ago. And that's to get all the fire districts with one tax rate. Now, with the state government talking about more than shared services, but combining entities, this may be the right time for the township to push ahead for this. There's such discrepancies with the tax rates for each of the districts. It's impossible. District number 1 has the highest tax rate and has been at times when I first...
Mr. Kaufman, would you hold on one second? Mr. Librio, would you mind closing the door? Mr. Nicastro, would you do us the honor on the other side, please?
Thank you, gentlemen.
When I first came here, the tax rate for District 1 was higher than the township's tax rate. It is still the highest tax. The reason is, there's no ratables. Yet, the fire department is required to provide the same equipment, training, services as what the district is that has all the commercial ratables. So if we have one ratable for the entire town rather than, and possibly leave the districts as they are, but have one tax rate, it would, especially with the reevaluation, it would do a service. And it would save money for a lot of taxpayers. Now to get here to the real reason I came, and of course you cut me off at the knees with having the tax assessor and his evaluation expert here. But I don't know if you recall the Howell newsletter that you put out, which gave reevaluation dates, and this is as June '06. And it says, June to September '06, property inspections will conclude. My property wasn't evaluated until late October. But that doesn't disturb me as much as notices of new evaluations are mailed to all property owners mid to late November. It is now mid to late, almost, January. I personally, I know that they sent out letters. I have not received a letter. They say those letters for farms are going to be mailed, the way I understood it, tomorrow. Monday, I leave for Italy for 2 weeks. There is no way that I can see that I'm going to be able to get to an evaluation. I won't have a computer, and I never did. I don't have a computer now, so I don't know what we're going to do. The other thing, it says January '07 tax lists filed with Monmouth County Tax Board. Well, they say now it doesn't have to be filed, I guess, until February 15th. I have two problems with this. Is one, even if I get a chance to meet with them between when I get back on February 4th and the 15th, if I have to make an appeal, that gives me a very short time, not like the consumer people, but to get a team together to make an appeal. Because if I go before the Monmouth County Tax Board for an appeal, I should have a real estate agent, probably an attorney, et cetera, and same with all the homeowners. My recommendation is to do like they did in Montgomery Township. I cut out of the Star Ledger. Town cites shifts in real estate values, which is a real problem today, because even though they may have used sales for '06, the property sales are just plummeting. It's in the news every day. I know on my road there's been 2 pieces of farm property up for sale for 9 months. I mean, they're just not moving. What they did, since the formula used to assign property values draws on the last 2 years of sales in this town of Montgomery Township in Sussex County, the tax assessor said that the yields were inappropriate assessments due to significant softening in the market. And they voted against, they say that basically they asked the Sussex County Tax Board to delay the reassessment change. It might be appropriate thing to do in light of the market, in light of the lateness of the finishing of the assessments. I can't tell you that, but I know how it gets to me, where the time frame is so short and everything is coming down to a deadline. It really hurts the property owner in trying to get things together. So that's why the main reason I did come, because this, which was put out, was good information. I saved it because I wanted to be there when the inspector came. Whole trouble is, they never sent out notices when they were going to inspect. I had people inspecting the properties across the street from me, and, oh, well, we can't inspect you because you're a farm. We do commercial inspections, and then who knows when they came. Luckily, my daughter-in-law was there. She let them into the house, but she didn't have the same information that I wanted to relay to them at the time. And it doesn't look like I'm going to be given a chance to relay that information to them myself because of the closeness of the deadline.
All right, Mr. Kaufman, when are you leaving?
I'm leaving Monday morning.
Is there a possibility that we could fit Mr. Kaufman in tomorrow or Friday?
What I was going to suggest, Mr. Hoffman, is that Mr. Linehan is still here.
Oh.
And Tom, would you mind just kind of having a sidebar with Mr. Kaufman, seeing if we can work something out to accommodate his schedule?
Absolutely.
All right, so,
I believe one of the
Tom is
problems,
great.
Mr. Kaufman
I have
didn't
no
get his letter
complaints.
yet. You didn't even get your letter yet, is that correct?
No, I don't even think my letter has been sent out.
Well-
Have you sent out farm letter?
Email tomorrow.
That's what I'm saying.
but I guess,
I will have it back to me tomorrow morning. I will handle it.
I don't have a
Okay.
problem, I just have to...
I think the solution, Mr. Kaufman, Mr.
Yeah, but
Linehan
there
is
may
saying
be
he
some
can get
other
it to you
people that
tomorrow.
have the same
Sure.
problem as I have.
You're right.
And it's not fair to them to have to go to the expense of filing an appeal and to do it right, because the assessor is going to be there to fight any changes once you file an appeal, to go without the necessary real estate people and an attorney. So it does cause a problem. And it's not just me, I may not have a problem with it, but it's such a short time frame, people are not here, it's way off the schedule that was supposed to be. I personally think that an effort should be made to the tax board either to get an extended period of time, if that isn't possible because of legal deadlines, then maybe just postpone it for a year. Newark postponed it for 25 years. So it isn't a problem that you can't just ignore them, because you can. By the time they take you to court.
All right, so Mr. Linehan, you're going to grab Mr. Kaufman before he leaves, please? We appreciate it. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Kaufman.
Tom will.
Have a good night, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Magid, welcome, sir. Come on up.
Hey, Magid, 89 Mariners Cove. I just want to give out a couple of things.
Take a moment.
And I just have one other thing, which in the past was already given to the mayor and to the manager, but I have them here again, and it's important because it designates exactly where, or maybe you want to give it to the deputy mayor, since I think you probably have this. It's up to you.
Whatever you like.
Uh,
The council actually got correspondence of all this.
Well, I'm going to leave an extra one just.
Please.
Especially since November the 13th, it designates. where
Of course.
these are.
Why don't we
Very
pass it
important.
down, people could re-review it.
Very important.
All right, Mr. Maggie, do you want us to review this, or are you going to paraphrase the contents of this material? What would you like to talk to us about?
You might take a squint at it for a minute if you want to, but I'll start talking now. Okay. What I've left with you is the fact that I called Mr. Dombowski, who's the water land use, he's the key guy at the DEP. And he said, he confirmed, that he would be only too glad to give you a permit to take out those fallen trees. In fact, when I explained the situation to him, he was very eager for that. And I've shown you on what I have here tonight. All you have to do is to send it to, with the information saying exactly where these fallen trees, I'm talking about the fallen trees, just for the record, in the Manasquan River that runs right behind our houses in that cul-de-sac area, and in particularly the part in the Manasquan River which is before it comes around to the Oxbow and then curves back. And the reason I mention that, by the way, is I spoke with a new resident at 94 Mariners Cove, and his house is located after the Oxbow, and he did tell me he had some fallen trees there, and he was, this is a new resident, great guy named Ron, and they were taken away, and that's delightful. However, when we last looked at what I've left you, the map of all the fallen trees on the westerly side, that is before the Oxbow part, they're still all there and gathering more crud all the time, and nothing's changed. And I left with you particularly my letter to you of November 13th, when I raised this very point. The reason I did it that time was, and you'll see from these photographs, that the prior year, in October of 2005, it rained 8 consecutive days, very hard, before the Mariners Cove was flooded for some distance up from the cul-de-sac. So all in all, it wasn't that terrible because it took a lot of rain to bring about, and Ron Sanisak put some sandbags at several of the houses and prevented pardon, the water from going in. So that was the year before. And the reason I wrote this other letter was, on November the 8th, was quite a difference with all those fallen trees. It was November the 8th of this past year, where after one day of pretty good rain, not only was that Manasquan River, I say 60 to 80 feet, I can't tell exactly, it's in the ballpark, it's way overflowed, and it even filled in on November the 8th. We have like a hollowed out sort of a detention basin, you could call it, hold some water, at the cul-de-sac end right off Mariners Cove, and that was full. And as I also pointed out in that letter, which I believe I left with the town council, or certainly with the manager's office, the sewers were backed up. There was water in the street, and there was nothing flowing down. Now, that was November the 8th. So, obviously, these trees are making a very big difference. On January the 1st, in fact, it was New Year's Eve, and partly into New Year's Day, one day of rain. And I took a look. And sure enough, that Manasquan River was again 60 to 80 feet of water, and may have been even some water in the woods in just off of Mariners Cove, but it didn't fill into that basin thing. And oddly enough, and by the way, these pictures were taken by a wonderful neighbor. First name is Paul, 91 Mariners Cove, which I gave out before. And he just happened to step outside about a week or so ago when the manager happened to, Tom Zanicki came by with, I believe, somebody else. And Paul showed him all the water. Now, this is not January 1st. This was another day, I don't know, week or so ago, and sure enough, it was about, again, lots of water, 60 to 80 feet. I looked outside. And in fact, I believe Paul said at the time when Mr. Zanicki saw it, he said, yeah, lots of water. What am I saying here? What am I really talking about? I've been talking about for a couple of months. What I'm saying is this. The situation is such that if action isn't taken immediately, this is very warm weather. We could have had a strange winter, although it's cold now. Any day you're going to have only a couple of days of rain. We could have a flood on those houses on Mariners Cove, some distance up. The time when it happened that surprised me the year before, and I'm sort of a little further up at 89, the water was right up to, it didn't go on my lawn, but it was up the street there. The situation is absolutely deplorable. It cannot remain. Any conversations I happen to have with the manager, in fact, I had one only a week or so ago, I really didn't get any information except to say, well, you know, they're working on it or some language like that. Look, we have to file this permit with Trenton. I saw that under item 16 of the previous meeting, there's emergency funds. I don't know how you're going to do it. But weigh it this way if you don't. For instance, one of my neighbors, a great neighborhood, 98, Mariners Cove, Frank Silva. His wife just had a baby, Scott Owen. It's a very alive, wonderful, terrific community. In fact, when I spoke to the new resident, I happened to give him out this thing, his name is Ron, I didn't get his last name. He's only been there a short time. He's the one that said they did take trees away on his side there, which is the westerly side. He's a terrific community. It is a terrific community. Why should the people here have to live in dread, and it's intolerable, day after day, even when it's not happening, because those trees are still there gathering crud? It is the responsibility, in fact, it would be irresponsible for this council, mayor and council, not to take action immediately and stop hoping for the best that we don't get this pouring of rain to inundate us. I'm saying this especially because I remember there's supposed to be a new wind in the council, and I'm hoping the new wind can have it move maybe faster because it wasn't moving at all last year. I'm going to sum up by saying this. I now, after 3 months of this, expect to be informed, because I haven't been informed of anything, of what this council is doing to take immediate action through the manager or however it's supposed to be. And the manager did speak to me a couple of weeks ago, but I got nothing from this thing being done immediately or right away or very, very soon. Now, I don't just want to sit here like I'm talking maybe to a wall that bounces off. I want this council to come back to me, inform me through the manager, however you want to do it, make a call, ask me to come down, and find out that you've gone to Andrew Jambowski. And all you have to do, that's why I left a map of where all these things are pinpointed, and it says, this is so granted, he's so delighted to give it, that it's an automatic thing. If you don't hear from him after he receives it for 10 days, you can go ahead. If there's any question, you'll hear from him. This is not something at all in the past few months that I've talked about that can stay even one extra day. Now, as far as the costs, you have to work that out. Consider the costs if these houses, you're smiling, all right, it's money. Considering the costs involved, if a number of houses were flooded, not only the replacement of the house, but the trauma on the people living there, especially those small children. Just weigh that and do some real responsible work on this matter I've been talking about. And again, I expect the new wind to maybe help out a little on this. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Lariah, welcome, sir. Come on up. Good evening. How are you, Mr. Lariah? Nice to see you.
Fine. Vince Lariah, 56C, The Villages. couple of things I want to ask for some advice and help. I got a call this afternoon from one of our residents at the Villages. He said, what are we knocking ourselves out for? Tying up, this is on the recyclables, tying up the newspapers, the cans. When the guy comes to pick them up, they commingle everything. Now, why are we knocking ourselves out?
All right, Mr. Chernetsky, can you shed any light on that?
No. I don't know specifically. In the Villages, the township goes in there and they collect them, and
Well, whoever has the contract. yes.
contractor,
Yeah.
and you've been directed in the past to tie
Yeah.
all your,
Oh, sure.
bundle
All
everything?
The newspapers are tied and bundled. The other recyclables, the cans and bottles, go into a single container.
That's right.
Right.
Everything does need to be separated.
Right.
Otherwise, it won't get picked up at your curb.
Okay, I know that perhaps it may not be the truck that goes into the Villages, but typically, a recycling fleet has separate containers.
No, when we had the other company, they did have a truck like that, but this company, the Central Jersey Waste, they have a big black garbage truck. And I watch the same thing, they throw everything in the back of the truck, when they come. They don't come more often than they do.
So those instructions were probably given to accommodate the previous contractor, and then weren't changed.
Freehold Yardage was the old contractor,
This
and
went
they
out-
had a separation truck.
This went out for bid, and through the bid parameters, and the new agency was the low bidder, and our purchasing office approved it, and they were to deliver the same services. In fact, we picked up cardboard, which we did not have under the previous contract. Now, thankfully, at least in my area, they've come as announced, if you will, but I have not actually seen them dump the material. Can you follow up, Mr. Chernetsky, with why are we separating the material? Maybe we don't have to do that anymore, and maybe they need to issue revised rules. And
It's a good program, because what doesn't go in that recycle goes into landfill, and it will reflect back on us, the Villages, for increased garbage removal costs. So I want to see the program stay, and
of course.
And I really would prefer that we take the effort to get this materials out of the landfill.
All right, so you'll get back to the council, and maybe Mr. Lariah as
Now-
well, we have his...
Now, I wouldn't
information
assume
on
that
file.
they're all going in the landfill mix, because some companies invest in just a plant that would sort of separate everything at the plant,
Just-
as opposed to at the source. But I will look
Have
into
the
it.
encouragement to continue. Speeding. We all know about this terrible, horrendous accident on that extension of Kozlowski Road into Freehold. And I just bring it up now just to remind you all, this is why we have a speed control program in Howell.
That's right.
I think our police department and the specialists should do everything possible to take some advantage of this horrible accident. Without speeding, we'd have 4 or more people participating with life in our communities. And then the final, I have occasion to meet with the Howell swim team. I meet with them in the sense that I'm in the locker room when they come in. The whole community, their parents, their teachers, should be very proud of these young people. They're gentlemanly. Of course, that's what we see in the men's locker room. But the young women are just as polite out in the pool area. Again, I just want to tell you how proud I am of these young people. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Lariah. Appreciate that. I may pronounce the next name incorrectly. If I do, I apologize. Kristen Pagenbrook. Pogrebnich. That's like a Chernetsky. Come on up, welcome. My apologies.
That's one version.
Good evening, Mr. Evans. If you would just give us your name and address for the record, it says you want to talk about changing permitted uses in the Ramtown section.
Hi, my name is Kristen Pogrebnik. I'm at 28 Higgins Court, Howell.
Good evening.
I'm just here tonight to be brief, just if we could maybe look into changing the permitted uses in the, I think it's commercial slash neighborhood or neighborhood slash commercial area of Ramtown. I just want to prevent any issues of something going in that doesn't really fit the community or is beneficial to our community. So if we can.
Can you give us, I mean, Ramtown, as you know, is a pretty big stretch of our community.
Okay.
Is there a particular area in, that you're thinking about?
Well, there is a rather decent size mall, Quail Creek Shopping Mall, or center, on Newton's Corner Road.
Sorry, take your time.
I am concerned, in the past, has been issues with a sports bar being placed there, being so close to a daycare and other family-orientated businesses in that shopping mall, as far as also being schools right around the corner, very heavily trafficked area. It's all surrounded by family-orientated businesses that cater to young families, young children. I am very concerned if we can reevaluate or maybe just change. I'm a newcomer, so I don't even understand all this, but I would like to have maybe the council reevaluate the permitted use in that area, because I think something like that is not conducive to that area, which is pretty much 100% surrounded by residential homes, and it is a residential road. There's other issues, I mean, there's many issues, but that was the main issue. That's why I am here, to follow through.
Okay.
Right, I actually believe that's classified as neighborhood commercial, and maybe what has to happen is you or I could bring this back to the master plan subcommittee for permitted uses in that zone. Because I believe right now, if somebody wanted to open up an adult bookstore in there, they could. I don't believe it's only in highway. I believe it's in any commercial zone. So it's a good idea, and we'll bring that back.
I appreciate it.
We'll bring it back to the planning board. Thank you, Mr. Howell.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Mr. Krupnik, you're next, sir. Come on up. Welcome. Mr. Krupnik, it just says here, well, go ahead and introduce yourself. It says you want to talk about the swine ordinance.
That's correct. Mark Krupnik, 344 Ford Road, Howell, New Jersey. I'm here about actually a couple quality of life issues, and I guess one of the things that brought me here this evening was I went through the agenda a couple days ago, and I see that you're going to amend the chapter entitled Mini Bikes to provide for penalties and violations. And the first thing that I wanted to say is I think this is a great idea, because I know there's a lot of people in the township that have problems with their neighbors or trespassers on properties who are using these vehicles, mostly on the weekend. And that brings me to, I have a person in my neighborhood that is not an owner-occupant. They bought this property for an investment property, and it was about a year ago. And they come out on the weekends, and they ride their ATVs from Saturday morning to Saturday evening, and from Sunday morning to Sunday evening. And seeing this change in the ordinance made me look up the ordinance, and I read it, and I was actually pleased when I read the ordinance, because it does say, in a manner so as to create loud, unnecessary, or unusual noise so as to disturb or interfere with the peace and quiet of other persons. And this is exactly what's happening with the new person in my neighborhood. Now to the swine ordinance. It just so happens that this person does share a common property boundary line with me. And he's obtained a couple of swines. He's got a little miniature zoo over there. I don't know what for, because again, he doesn't live there. But he felt it fit to put his swine pen and the shed for the swine right up next to the property line, abutting next to my fence. I've already filed an RTC complaint with code enforcement. I'm hoping at the very least to get relief to have the shed moved out of the side yard that's supposed to be there, according to the code for the height of the shed. But again, as with the mini bike ordinance, took out the swine ordinance and read the swine ordinance. And we have a very good ordinance here. It says that you need permits for the swine, and they need to be 500 feet from any property line. And there's a couple other limitations here in the ordinance. However, when you get down to the end of the ordinance, it says, nothing in this chapter shall affect or cover the premises where less than 5 swine are kept and maintained. Now, are 4 swine any more objectionable, or are 6 swine any more objectionable than 4 swine? 4 swine on a property line is okay for somebody to have, but 5 or 6 are not. It appears that this ordinance was probably written and adopted sometime in the early 1970s. I would say that residentially, and I totally believe in a farmer's right to farm and believe in the protection that farmers should be offered. However, my interpretation of this ordinance is that we could go into Glen Arden or Winston Park or any of the other developments in town and have 1, 2, 3, or 4 swine in somebody's backyard, and with this exclusion in the ordinance, I don't think there's any way to protect any neighbors in any neighborhoods from their neighbors keeping these animals. So I guess I'm requesting that the council review this ordinance and maybe consider eliminating this section of the ordinance, that nothing in this chapter shall affect or cover the premises where less than 5 swine are kept and maintained, because I truly think that it's not an unreasonable thing to expect a buffer from a neighbor for keeping of these types of animals in a neighborhood.
Okay. Any comment? I mean, we're going to get to it, obviously, on the agenda.
Well, no, it's not on the agenda. This is...
I know that, but when we talk about...
Okay, the mini bike thing is on the agenda, but the swine thing is something...
One quick question. Did you say that the people, they do not reside on that property?
That is correct.
So there's nobody there on that property?
They've purchased it as an income property. It is a multifamily property. There is one home on the property that I believe has been put into habitable condition, and it appears that somebody may live in that dwelling.
But those aren't their animals?
That's correct.
Sure it's not their pets.
I seriously doubt it. I'm right next door. I watch the comings and goings, and in my opinion, there's quite a few code violations on this property, but I find the swine particularly objectionable. And again, in reviewing the ordinance, I think we would be doing a service to the township in the future to maybe tighten this up a little bit.
Does the council have any objection in asking Mr. Chinesky to take a look at this? I mean, if it's sticking out like a sore thumb, and obviously, anyone have any problem with this?
No, I have no problem.
Okay, I do have extra...
Has it been reported to the code enforcement
Yeah,
department?
he said that he did.
Oh, yeah.
And how long ago did you report it, Mr.
About a
Conley?
week,
A
10
week,
days.
okay.
Yeah, I haven't had an opportunity to follow up with them to find out if they've done anything, because again, there are other, what I consider possibly severe code violations on this property. I checked in Mr. Marinacci's office about shed permits. They've issued 1 shed permit for 1 shed to be built on this property, and right now there's 4 or 5. With 1 under construction now. There's truck trailers on the property, which I haven't gone into the ordinance to check specifically, but I'm reasonably sure that big truck trailers are not permitted on residential properties. But again, I find the swine particularly objectionable. And at least, you know, if the guy wanted them, put them in the middle of the property, put them in the back of the property. You don't do that thing right on your neighbor's sideline. It's not a neighborly thing to do.
Wait, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Dalton.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask the town manager, what typically, when a citizen reports an issue of concern like this, what is the policy or protocol for the code enforcement department to get back to him?
To get back to him, well, you should have, if you filed an RTC, you should have gotten a phone call.
I got a call
immediately
from Janice, I think the next business day, from Janice and Mr. Marinacci's office again, and she told me that it was being forwarded to code enforcement. This is not an urgent, you know, life or death thing for me. It doesn't have to be acted on yesterday. But it is an ongoing situation here, and I have informally spoken to the code enforcement people about situations on this property before, but again, with the swine, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back, and I did file a formal RTC, so I will follow up myself with code enforcement, because I want to find out if they've done anything.
Yeah, I suspect Chris Jackson is researching the various codes. Chris
I kind of think it went to
Jackson,
Jim, but...
Jim Burdick?
Yeah.
Is probably researching the various codes, perhaps reaching out to the county health department, basically trying to gather up what's been violated, what hasn't, before any action's taken.
Well, that's understandable.
Especially if you're saying there's multiple issues out there.
I believe so, yeah.
Mr. Howell, you have a
And
question?
just as an aside, I believe Mr. Burdick is out for the remainder of this week and next week. I believe he had knee surgery or some type of surgery. So
That's
that
true, but it's in
could
the
be
hands of
why.
the department, and
Pardon me?
They're researching.
He's not the only code
Right.
enforcement
Yeah, I know we
official
have
in the
two, so
department there,
right
so-
now we're down to one.
Okay.
All right, so, Mr. Chudinsky, I think it was the consensus, you take a look at the swine ordinance, and if that can be corrected, obviously, and that's an easy one, we'd like
Would
to take a look at that.
anybody like a copy to take a look at it? I got them if anybody...
What's the ordinance number?
It says Chapter 284 swine. I'll bring it up. I have a couple.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Krupnik. Mrs. Smith, come on up, welcome.
Thanks very much.
It's all right, I know where to find it, thank you.
Hello, Mrs. Smith.
Hi. Pauline Smith. Well, it's the beginning of a new year, and we have new council people, and I just want to say thank you in advance, anticipating that you'll do your very best to do the right thing for all of we people in Howell Township, and also our pre-existing council members. Hope you do the same. I'm here. I've been around for a while. I have quite a bit of experience, and as usual, I offer my help, assistance in any way that I can. And I know sometimes you get tired of listening to me, but I'll say it anyway. Tonight I'm going to start with a thought about our revaluations because of the report and some things mentioned. I'm wondering if the number of people who have called to make appointments for review is lower than anticipated, simply because it started with the area where senior citizens are. And actually, in the northern part of the township and Ramtown, I got several phone calls over the past few days. And I didn't think about it until this report, but while the gentlemen were speaking, it dawned on me that everybody but one who called me with questions were older people and sometimes people alone. And the overall statements were, well, I'll wait and see when I get the tax bill and see how it comes out money-wise. They don't understand. And I tried to explain that at that point they'll have missed several steps and opportunities to correct something that might be a simple error. So my advice was to make appointments and come in and discuss it, because that's what they're for. It just might simply be something is incorrect. And I described what happened to us in the last one. They had our house twice the size it was, a finished basement when we have a little country cellar, which is a hole in the floor for the heating system and the air conditioning, and my canning shelves, my pantry. That's all that fits down there. It's not finished, it's not a basement, it's a little country cellar. They had extra bedrooms, or anyway, at least 2 extra rooms. So if I hadn't gone in, it would have developed into a much larger problem to appeal later on. I don't know whether those people that spoke to me eventually called and came in or not, but to me that's an example of the people that are out there. And maybe some outreach to the people in the gated communities that you can get all at once, explaining a little more thoroughly than what they're reading in their letter, that this is just an opportunity for them to make sure if it's as simply as to say, this is what my house, my home consists of, and is it accurate? Might save something. But that's just a thought. Comment that I wanted to make, Mr. Walsh made a statement, Reorganization Day, about having to help people, knowing that a lot of people were getting into having problems, the economy going down, and remortgages and all that, and what can we do to help? Well, I have several suggestions, and people don't usually agree with me, but I think that the ability to live a modest, hard-working life in Howell Township is what's the best, has been the best thing about Howell Township. And when we, and I don't include me in the we, but we as a community, strive to have large houses on small lots and an expensive lifestyle, that doesn't help everybody to live and survive. And I think we should have more ordinance that don't exclude those people. I'm not saying that at all, but allow for people to live the modest lifestyle that they choose to, that they can within their means. And I have seen several court decisions in recent years and several ordinances. Other municipalities have them. And we at Planning Board and Master Plan Committee, when I was on both, researched and made recommendations, one of them being the the area ratio of impervious surface coverage per lot limited. As a matter of fact, when we were in court with the challenge to the 6-acre zoning, the judge at one point asked the question as to whether or not we had this ordinance, that this would be a certain help to maintain open space and control growth, in my terminology. And I'd really like to see that one of the first ordinances that you look at. Once that's established, doesn't say you can't build a big house, but you can't build it on an acre lot or a half-acre lot and cover it all up with house and pools and whatever. It allows for a more modest lifestyle. And I always, when I talk about things like this, I always throw in how often we get calls from real estate people who want to know if we want to put our house on the market, because small houses like ours are much in demand for people who are just starting out or people who are retiring and want to live in a single-family house as opposed to a gated community or an apartment. So I think we need more small houses, and but they shouldn't be all jammed together in a clump. They should have just enough space around them for people to handle. Another thing that I'd like to see us all look at, I've heard 2 or 3 people come up and talk about the quality of life issues. We seem to, because of money, and I know money is a big problem to you because you have to stretch it just like the rest of us do. But there's been such a concentration on rateables, it's forgotten about the effect that it has on people's lives. And we have developed so much, and we have so many areas that are zoned back to back, that the impact on people's lives and the quality of their life and their safety is tremendous. And I think that, and I've always thought this, especially the SED zones, because most of them were plotted out 30 years ago, and people still live there. It's a non-permitted use to have your house in one of these zones, because, and talk about non-permitted uses, which is always a problem we hear with rezoning, and why you shouldn't rezone because you make so many people non-conforming. When these zones were mapped out and zoned SED, everybody was non-conforming, 100% of all the zones. And if you go through them now, and you, Ms. DeMarks was here during, she lives, and I've heard from her many times over the years, even when I sat up there, that the impact on the people who live on Yellowbrook Road, because that was made, they're all non-conforming. Now, I don't want to cause problems for the businesses that are already there. They have rights too. And my very simple answer is, and we've done it in past years, look at the uses and make the uses more compatible with people living between them, so that it's a lot easier for them to live side by side. And we've done it in past years, but then somebody, another council comes in, governing body, this changed from Township Committee Council, looks at it and says, well, we need more ratables. And then all of a sudden, the list of things that are permitted in the SED zones is more intense, longer, and it's like we lose ground. We gain a little bit and lose a lot more. So please look at these quality of life issues and look at that thought. Because if you really look at the list of permitted uses in SED zones, you can do almost anything. I mean, you can have a stinking tannery in plain English. And I mean that literally, it wasn't an insult. It would smell terrible, a tannery. You can do things with heavy metal. You can do things with heavy concrete. And I was glad to hear about the grant for work on Yellowbrook Road. It drastically needs it. But that brings up another thing that I've said, and please look at. It's not a rateable if it costs us a whole bunch of money. And those big trucks on those little old roads ruin those roads, and it costs a fortune to repair them, and it costs a lot more than the taxes they bring in. So are they really ratables? Destroys the quality of life, costs us a fortune, our taxes go up. What's the use? It doesn't work. So please look closely at that, and I've got lots more ideas. And I don't want to take up any more of your time. I'll just comment on one more thing because it's on the agenda. All the off-road, I don't know what to call them, there's so many, they're mini bikes, they're ATVs, they're whatever. They run wild up and down Vanderveer Road. They scare me to death because the 15 acres across the road and the berm are, and it's against the law for them to be there. That law was passed several years ago on township property. But they go up and down all the time. I'm not just talking about a distraction or a disturbance from noise. They scare me to death. I don't want to have to call 911 with some child underneath one of those vehicles. And if we could do something to enforce the laws that we already have for their own good, because as we've seen with the accident mentioned tonight, I was acquainted with those boys through my 17-year-old nephew, and it's a hell of a price to pay even if you're wrong, even if you do things like speeding or have a good time. It's a hell of a price to pay. So sometimes we do have to be protected against ourselves. And mom and dad can't be everywhere. So I would really like to see, I don't know what the answer is because the kids have them, they want to have fun. Not all the children or young people that have them have properties big enough of their own, but riding on the road as they do and literally jumping that berm, and I think you're all acquainted with that berm. It's probably 20 foot in the middle. It's very high, and they come flying over that both ways, sometimes back out into traffic. It's scary. It really is. So on that note, I'll leave you, and again, I'm here. I'll be here for a long time, I promised. In a fit of anger, I promised Mr. Tabella I'd be here till I was 100. Remember, I'm going to be here till I'm 100.
I'm hoping it's 110.
Thank you. But any help that I can be for all of you, and good luck to all of us.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
And be safe, well, good health to everybody.
Thank you, Mrs.
Same to you, Mrs. Smith. Thank you. Mrs. Dixell, come on up, Mrs. Dixell. Mr. Meyer still here? Steve Meyer? He is. Okay, I didn't see you, Mr. Meyer. I'm sorry. Hello, Mrs. Dixell. Good evening.
Barbara Dixell, Howell Township, Villages. Several things. I'm going to save this one for last, because, okay. My board vice president just asked me to ask about the fence between us and the new developments. Well, does anybody really care? I don't think so.
Well, I think, Mrs. Dixell, everybody cares. I don't think there's any question
Well,
about
I
that.
keep asking months and months and months. I want a meeting with Lennar.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
We are working on a
Chinesky,
series
can
of
you-
meetings with, trying to get a series of meetings with Lennar, and we will raise this topic with them.
Well, please make sure we're there.
Oh, yes, and we did mail them a letter.
I know,
But
I
we'll be
have-
following up with this meeting.
It's, like I said, Senator Stinger said, we bought our houses, we are entitled to a quality of life, we're here 30 however many years, we said they can, we didn't say they can't come, but give us a break, give us our quality of life, let us live our senior years in peace. It's our last house before we die. What do we want? Hold it. The new houses are there, our living rooms are here. You want to go watch these new houses, eat breakfast, lunch, and supper every damn day? I don't think so.
I think we all agree with you, Mrs. Dixell. I guess the only point I'm going to make is that our manager has reached out. Lennar doesn't really have any motivation. Let me just, hold on. Lennar doesn't have any motivation to do this. I have great respect for Senator Singer. He's a dear personal friend. If he's offered so many solutions, let's get him on the phone and have him call Lennar. Have we done that? Maybe if Senator Singer can help us out, let's get his office involved, and maybe he can accelerate. What do you think, Mr. Chinesky? Will you do that?
If that's the direction of the council,
Anyone disagree? I mean, Senator Singer continues to offer advice that the council, let me finish.
He's not offering us advice, he's just saying we're entitled to a quality of life.
No
and I don't
question
think anybody can disagree with him.
I think we all agree, and since he's so willing to get involved in these local municipal issues, I think we should
He is our
invite him
senator.
to help come up with a solution, and maybe he can help get Lennar to the table more quickly. Anyone disagree?
I agree 100%.
All right, Mr. Chinesky, get him on the horn
I
tomorrow.
want to see if you'll live in peace if this happens, though. That's my gig.
All right, what
All we
else?
want is our privacy.
What else do you have, Mrs. Dixell?
Okay, the 9/11 memorial. I did get I got an email from Ms. Milanowitz up at Ramtown. I know I emailed the council also, because she asked me, I said emailed. Is anything being done for that? Is the township going to replace this? Are they going to, who's going to pay for the replacing of this memorial?
I have authorized the expenditure necessary to fix the lights, so that the lights can be functioning, and I've directed Public Works to do that.
And a group of private citizens has offered to put up a reward to help.
I mean, I did offer them a donation, but I want to, a personal donation, but I want to make sure that the township's going to meet their,
Sounds like we're on
Because
top of it.
I was there the day they dedicated that, and was, just a bunch of private citizens, and it was a very moving, thing, but they did it themselves, and it was wonderful and beautiful, and it's a shame that kids can't have respect, or people can't have respect, or whoever it is. But can the Howell Township enforcement, whatever it is, agencies, police, patrol that area if it's not a marked car, a non-marked car, or somebody to figure out if they can catch anybody doing any
I
of this
think the
stuff?
police have opened up an investigation. God bless you. We have a top-flight police department. If anything can be done, they're certainly the experts to put together an investigation. I think they're on top of it.
Okay, all right, the tax appeal, it's my next, okay, I did go for a meeting with them. In the Villages, let me tell you, I think it's absolutely wrong that the tax company won't put themselves out and come to the Villages or go to Surrey Downs. We have 1,000 senior citizens, we have 671 houses. A good many of our citizens don't drive, they barely walk, they barely get to the clubhouse. You know what? If they could get them a bus to the clubhouse, they'd come. You're not going to get all these people to get in here. And I'm sure a lot of people want to come, a lot of people are elderly, maybe some of them don't understand, but I think it's an absolute shame that these people won't give of themselves to come to the Villages. Pack up the books, put them in a police car, and take them over to the Villages. I mean, you got sick elderly people in wheelchairs, you got people that can barely walk. I mean, it's not fair. So anyway, my next thing is, okay, I had my meeting with them. They consider the villages to be a townhouse condo. Number one, we are not a townhouse condo. We are not a townhouse. We are a single-family condo. I don't know where they got townhouse condo, but we're not. Okay, they said, we own a percentage of the land. We own the land that the house sits on. No, we don't. The villages owns the land. And we own a percentage of the common ground. No, we don't. We own the inside of our houses. We are told time and time and time again, we own nothing but the inside of our houses. So the village's assessment was done wrong. They need to come out and redo it. I'm really furious. And then the tax people, you say, are going to fight any appeal, so we're kind of shafted. We don't have a fighting chance. I really feel that we don't have a chance for anything.
Well, Barbara, where directly do you think that it's wrong that, being reasonable, that you should win on appeal and get them lowered? I'm just that you don't own the land?
We don't own the land, number one. We own the inside of our houses. We're told time and time again, even in the board, in several board meetings, it comes up occasionally. We own the inside of our houses. We do not own the land. We don't own the land the house sits, the land the house sits on.
And the association owns the land?
The association owns it, period. We don't own it.
Is there a separate assessment for the association?
We pay our dues. I don't know what we pay for.
Yeah.
I guess we pay.
How many houses are in the village?
671.
So don't you own one 671
maybe we do.
undivided interest?
I don't know.
I think
maybe.
that's the way it works.
It is. We've talked about this, about the villages, and
And also, these assessments were done when property values were a lot higher. Now they've dropped. I really just think this came at the wrong time. And I'm going to tell you also, seniors in Delaware don't pay school tax. Maybe that might be a way to drop, It's going to be hard for us seniors, okay? People who are on fixed incomes, thinking that our taxes, when this assessment is over at fair market value, are going to almost double what we are now. It's going to be a tough, hard road when you get people in the villages, people on fixed incomes, who don't make it now, who go from hand to mouth, who don't make it, can't cut it, don't do it now. How are they going to do this when our taxes double? And you have to come up with $75 to $100 a week just to put away for taxes. Are they not going to eat? Are they not going to pay their medical bills? What are they not going to pay? They're going to have to not pay something in order to pay the taxes in this town, or the water bill, because the water bills now are outrageous. So something, I think the council needs to take some direction to do something to make it fairer, certainly for a lot of the seniors the elderly seniors on fixed incomes. I don't think it's really fair. And then we're going to get hit again when the school budget comes up, which is 72% of our taxes or whatever. Okay, a couple of things on the agenda I want to ask you about. I really think it needs to be a little bit fairer. Especially on people who live on nothing but their Social Security and don't make it now. 9B15.
Okay. You have a question on that one?
Just what is it?
I know that Mr. Nunziato is not here. We all have the backup. Mr. Chernetsky, could you give any background? This appears to be normal course of business. Sewer approval.
Preliminary just signifies that an application's been received. And that's all it is at this point. That an application's been received and that the utility engineer has taken it in and will evaluate it before a final approval is granted and or recommended to the governing body.
Can you tell me where on Route 9 this is?
Hold on a second, Mrs. Dixell. Mr. Filaccio, it looked like you were about to make a comment. Okay. Go ahead.
Where is that on Route 9?
That's where the Crazy Joe's furniture store is, the
Okay.
Wine on 9, the health store, the art gallery, the restaurant, and the Crazy
Okay.
Joe's. It's
No, because
that-
I occasionally bring that up because, if it just says Route 9, you don't know whether it's north, south, or, what street, and it would just be very helpful if they would just put a street in so you can visualize it in your head. Okay, 9B39.
9B39?
And 9B40.
Mr. Chinesky, just as a point of reference, that sewer, the 9B13, is that one of the properties that's hooking into the new Route 9 South?
Yes, the other thing I was going to add is...
Coming online.
They're coming online, and they only go through the preliminary process on that since the sewer is now existing.
Okay.
Right.
9B39, this is
And
a...
40.
And 40. On 39, we need to hire, as you obviously are aware, a tax appeal attorney. Council went through the interviewing process at great length, and this merely is the memorialization of a selection of a professional, which will be discussed here this evening.
9B40?
I'm sorry?
9B40.
And 9040, as is generally the case in a transition process, the former township attorney obviously is in the midst of handling any number of legal matters for which his office is significantly into the case, if you will, 60, 70, 80%. And it would be unwise for us to try and transition the
Sure.
matter to a new attorney.
Absolutely.
So Mr. Bongiovanni, as head of the legal department, has worked with the outgoing township attorney. They've come up with recommendations that have met his office's satisfaction. And so we are obviously appointing Mr. Gannon's firm for the purposes of completing the assignments that he's already been engaged in.
He was a good guy, I liked him. He was a
He was a
really
real
good guy.
Absolutely.
And he was very easy to work with. And by the way, how are we doing with the water thing? Has the water quality issue, the Jersey American water thing with the, the hearing we went to July 19th with Judge Hurd, how are we doing with that? Has there been any decisions handed down yet?
There has not been any decision that we have received from the Board of Public Utilities with respect to the township entering on the record our concerns about the water rates.
And remember that we did bring up the point that the water quality in the villages was not good, the water's undrinkable, and we had the meeting in Mr. Chernetsky's office. How did any of that go? Because they said, well, it's going to cost them $70 million in a lot of years to go fix this. Well, we're not going to live that long until they spend $70 million in a lot of years to go fix this.
Barbara, there were a couple things that actually you and I were going to work on together that we have to follow up on. And I'll report to the council once you and I can do that.
Let me know what you want me to do.
Remember, one of the priorities, and we were going to work through this Senator Singer's office on this because it's the most appropriate place, is to install an aeration system in the Manasquan.
Absolutely.
And that's
but
that was one of the major causes of some of the foul taste.
But that's not the Manasquan River.
The reservoir. The reservoir?
That's the New Jersey Water Supply Authority that we had spoken about.
Yeah, but wasn't that Oak Glen? Wasn't that the Oak Glen plant?
The treatment plant, but they draw the water from the reservoir, so what the gentleman said that day was, when I suggested it, that, putting big fountains in the reservoir, which would aerate it, which would help to kill off the algae blooms
but didn't they say when the water was tested in the reservoir, the trihalomethane were 25? I mean, it was very good.
Right, but what happens is, as the water passes through the processing system and the chlorine is added to it, it causes the trihalomethane numbers to
But that happens at Oak Glen. That doesn't happen in the reservoir.
Right, Barbara, but what the gentleman said, if you remember, was if the algae numbers were lower, in the reservoir, that wouldn't occur, because the algae, when it interacts with the chlorine, is what causes that foul taste and odor that you have.
How much lower than 25?
If we can remove it at the source,
Yeah.
then there won't be any counteraction of the chlorine.
How much lower than 25 can it get?
0?
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay, anything else, Mrs. Dixell?
No, I just want to just say that, I just hope that the tax assessment winds up to be fair for everybody, because I would hate to see people having to move out of Howell Township because you can't afford to live here anymore.
We all agree. Thank you, Mrs. Dixell. Mr. Meyer, come on up, sir. Welcome. Good evening, Mr. Meyer.
Good evening. Stephen Meyer, Adelphia Road, Farmingdale.
Mr. Meyer, would you just kind of tilt that mic a little closer to you as we get it on the record?
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Two things, both pertaining to ordinances. Something that came up at zoning last Monday. Speaking as a citizen, though, we had informal discussion on this, but no formal and it'll probably be brought forward when we have our yearly review. The first is our right to farm ordinance. Since we had Geese Police came in 2000, we realized we had a deficiency in the ordinance where it does not match the state's ordinance, and that's in regards to dogs being included in farm animals. And what we need to see, and what we've been looking for the last 7 years, is just the addition of 2 words to the farmland ordinance, except dogs. The state statute has it, ours doesn't. We mirror it on every other.
All right, hold that point right there, Mr. Meyer, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Mr. Chernetsky, this is obviously a very simple request. Can you work on this, and perhaps this could be something the council can act on fairly quickly? Anyone on the council object?
2 words, except dogs? No.
Any concerns?
No.
Okay. Sure, what's next?
The second is, we've got a number of builders who will come in. They'll come in front of master plan committee. They'll get knocked down there. The citizens, if they actually attend the master plan, think it's gone away. They then come in and sue. As soon as this happens, your hands are tied. You can't warn the citizens. What I would like to see is if we can craft an ordinance that when they come in for master plan to make a presentation, or if they sue the town, they'd be required to notify adjacent property owners the same as if they came in front of a board.
It's a great idea.
Wording, one thing would be to word your ordinance, though, that it limits it for the reason that the homeowner can secure an attorney, as opposed to homeowners just coming in mass and disrupting proceedings.
If I may, Mr. Bongiovanni and Mr. Gannon had a rule that he would not be an armchair attorney and commenting on these would or wouldn't go well. I'm certain you'll have a similar approach, but in your perspective or in your experience, is what Mr. Meyer described something that is worth pursuing? Is it something that can be upheld? If you wouldn't mind, I'm sorry.
I think it would be upheld. I think it would be upheld.
All right, is it the pleasure of the council?
I think it would be upheld.
Okay. Pleasure of the council that we explore something like this and that we direct Mr. Chernetsky's office with guidance to work on this?
Mayor, just on the other matter, before we prepare an ordinance, perhaps we could do a report that would indicate whether or not we would be creating any nonconformancies with respect to the accept dog issue. Council may want to know that before.
You would be creating at least one.
Yeah, I mean, I think and certainly for the benefit of Mrs. Dalton and Mr. Howell, what Mr. Chernetsky has implemented, and Mr. Walsh and Ms. Showmaker and I are aware, and it's a terrific process, is before we get it on a workshop, I think you generally go through these at your staff meetings with your department heads. So while we may say to you, it sounds like a great idea, go do it, you work the detail on a day-to-day basis, and you may come back and say, here are the operational reasons why it might not be doable, and we would debate it here. I think we would expect the same as it relates to this no dogs. So certainly when you bring it to us for a workshop perspective, I think we would still expect pros and cons and your professional opinion. And then with respect to this latter issue, does anyone on the council disagree that it's worthy of having the manager take a look at it and report back to us about this allowing residents to get legal representation through notification?
If it protects our residents, I think it'd be a very good idea if it's legal and it can be enforced.
Do you have a comment, Mrs. Dalton?
I have no
I want to clarify. So when developers go in front of the master plan subcommittee during hearings for revising the master plan,
Yes.
they bring their applications, their
They
ideas.
come in,
how
they
they're
usually
gonna
give a
make this pla-
conceptual.
Right. And the master plan subcommittee decides not to put their concept in the master plan.
Yes.
Okay. And then
And,
they subsequently sue.
They sue the town at that point. They use, in many cases, they use a builder's remedy, which is how Elon came in with trying to take a builder, an obligation from down at the fountains. So in the long run, because they were able to do this, we ended up with 2 developments rather than just 1.
And the issue is, how do we provide notice? How do we try to make sure that the citizens get notice of that?
The same
Lawsuit.
notification we require for the boards, which is they have to, by certified mail, notify of homeowners within 200 feet, and they have to post a sign on the property.
Do you have a comment, Mr. Chernetsky?
I've spoken offline with I think all the council members here, perhaps about in the future, what we would do is the master planning process would be neighborhood-based, where the hearings would be done at kind of from, on a neighborhood basis to plan neighborhoods. And I think that approach would place a greater emphasis on getting the residents out and having them know that their input is vital to the process.
Okay.
But it's still the problem, once the master plan turns something down or doesn't include it, the town gets sued, there's all of a sudden, it's sealed.
But you're saying that the suits arise from the, Mayor, may I?
Go right ahead, sir, please.
I apologize. Are you saying that the suits are arising as a result of the subcommittee hearings? Sort of we're showing our hand, and we're sort of like forewarning what's going to be happening? And what we're probably doing is commenting on whatever the concept's being proposed, right? Which just further adds...
They can't initiate a suit until they've been turned down, and that's normally the place where they first be turned down on this.
Mr. Meyer, was this also something that came from the zoning board?
No, this is something I've been toying with for a while myself.
All right.
And the other really hasn't officially come from the zoning board at this point. We had an informal discussion with it, but it's a concern we've had. It was a concern we had back in '02 or 2000 when we had Geese Police, and that was appealed.
Okay.
Mr. Meyer, just thinking about this a little bit more, you would have the prospective applicant for development. That would be the idea, but there is no application at the time. But if his property is rezoned, the idea would be that he might be an applicant for development. You would have him bear the cost of the notification and stuff like that?
He would have to.
Yeah, because that might become a discriminatory issue that might have to be researched. 'Cause I'm not sure if you could just
That's why I'd
place
just
that
like to see
burden
if
on
there's
one.
anything we can do along these
Yeah.
lines.
That might be a
Well, on
problem.
that, on Mr. Meyer's request, what's the pleasure of the council in terms of giving Mr. Chernetsky some direction about what to do? Comments?
Yeah, I'd like to have him go ahead and research and see where we can go with that.
Okay,
Yeah, I
Mrs.
think it would
Schoening.
behoove the
Take a
board
look at
to
it.
give him that permission to do that.
You're good with it?
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, Mrs. Dalton, any
Yeah, that's
concerns?
fine.
All right, Mr. Chernetsky, I think your directive is to look into exploring the feasibility about Mr. Meyer's recommendation and report back to us about what can be operationalized.
I think perhaps we might want to expand it to just what opportunities the township or the zoning board may have to notify, to sort of, even if it's the posting of the fact that a lawsuit's been filed, that's public record. Maybe that can just go on our website. People can, whatever we can do to notify people to keep our citizens informed.
Quick comment on her comment. You're referring to the applicant or the person who is bringing forward. They
the
are
suit.
the persons that
Yeah.
will be financially responsible for notifying the surrounding. Yeah, okay.
Okay, I think the recommendation, Mr. Chernetsky, is come up with some creative alternatives that address at least the core issue that Mr. Meyer has come up with. There may be another way to go about this that satisfies our concerns, and we trust you'll come up with those approaches.
Yeah, I understand the problem.
Good. Anything else, Mr. Meyer?
No, that's it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. We're going to take a 10-minute recess before we get back into our regular agenda. Getting back to order, members of the public, if you would kindly retake your seats and any conversation out to the hall, we would appreciate it. Okay, we are moving on to our consent agenda items. I just want to remind the council, this is actually a combined workshop and regular, so we haven't caucused on any of these items so far. So while at our normal regular meeting, I would just ask someone to make a motion to move all of the items with respect to consent agenda. Let's just take a minute. If anyone has any questions on any of the consent agenda items, we'll certainly direct them to Mr. Chernetsky or the right professional. So let's just take a minute on consent agenda, all the items in asterisk.
One question, Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
9B39 says authorize appointment of tax appeal attorney, and then on our add-ons, it says 9B42, appoint tax appeal attorney. Is it one?
9B, yeah.
It's just a numbering thing.
It's a numbering thing. All right, so it's one of the same, so we don't need 9B42, is that right then? Ms. Woolman, Mrs. Showmakers, hold on just give me 1 second. Gentlemen, I apologize if you... That's okay. Okay. Mrs. Showmaker's question is, it appears that there's a duplicate item with respect to 39 and 42. Are there any differences? I'm sorry? So what is the right item? Is it 39 or 42? All right, great. Okay, well, we'll come back while they're looking into that. Are there any other questions with respect to, I'm sorry?
They're one and the same, Mr. Mayor, 39.
All right, so when we add on, for example, do we need to add on 42, or because it's? Okay, so we're just going to strike 42. Okay. Any other questions on any of the consent agenda items, including the motions?
May I have a question on 9B25?
Yes, sir.
That's unused engineering inspection fees for Lanesville Marketplace. Are we still having issues with that detention basin? And I know we're kind of handicapped here, but Mr. Nunziato isn't here.
Mr. Filiaccio, can you comment on that for us, please?
The only thing I can comment as far as developers escrow is this is engineering inspection fees. We have guarantee deposits and, maintenance deposits on hand to guarantee that. So I don't see any need to hold up, unused inspection fees if they're done with the inspection process.
Okay. And then the only other one I had a question on was 9B18. That was a change order for Earl Asphalt for the 5 Points Road.
Okay.
I noticed also that they're due to be awarded a contract for, I believe it's Cranberry Road.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed a discrepancy in some of the fees, the schedules. On this change order where they're looking for additional payments, they billed us for traffic directors and flaggers on the change order at $100 per hour, and on this new one, they're billing us $77 an hour. Well,
All right, we're on 9B18, Mr. Chinyetsky, and I think
Okay.
you understand Mr.
Each
Howell's
bid stands on its own, so.
I mean, that's quite a big difference, it's $23 an hour, so if we can get them to knock the $23 an hour off of the $100 an hour one,
It's either a matter of rejected or rebid. We can't negotiate with them.
we can't negotiate a contract?
Not when you're bidding. This is a $180,000 contract. It's a formal bid process. You can't negotiate with them since we have three legitimate bidders.
I want to see if we can get them to lower the numbers on their change order, not on the contract for the Cranberry Road one. The Cranberry Road one, the numbers are much lower. The change order numbers are the ones
Okay, the change order I'd have to defer to Bill Nunziato on that one.
and then there's bills in there, there's things in there that, they're charging us $160 per sign to put up a sign in the road that says paving ahead.
Are these, to Mr. Howell's point, what are the parameters? Does this fall under this lovely governmental low bid, and how does this work?
These are formal. These are, $100,000, they're $150,000 worth of grant money, plus the town adds to it, so they're in excess of $150,000, and they are the formal contract, bid contract type of things. I have to look back and we'd have to, and I hope Bill has, and the consulting engineer who approved the change orders looked back at the bid items and reviewed that. But
is there a time of the essence on this, or can this be pulled this evening so that Mr. Howell's observations can be responded? 9B18. Can 9B18 be pulled for this evening to satisfy Mr. Howell's concerns? They're certainly valid. Or does this need to be approved tonight? Is there some pending issue?
We're not meeting again till the 6th.
February 6th?
I don't foresee it being too much of a problem. We have his money.
Pardon me?
Right.
If it's a matter of just getting, assurances and a review by the engineers involved and everything, we have his money. And I don't see that there's a problem in holding off on it until you're satisfied with it.
All right, so let's, we're not going to act on 9B18. When we move consent agenda, I'll ask that we move on all items excepting 9B18. Okay. Any additional questions or comments on the consent agenda or motions? Ms. Dalton, anything?
No.
Mr. Walsh? Mrs. Showmaker?
One
consent
question
agenda.
Consent agenda on 19 on Cranberry Road.
On which one, Ms.
On Cranberry Road, the resurfacing of Cranberry Road.
Okay. What item number is that?
Believe it or not, I had 3 calls about Cranberry Road.
19.
Because people already thought it was being resurfaced, and they wanted to know who did the resurfacing on it. But I think what they've done so far is they're just patching it from the opening. Would that be correct?
Mr. Czarnecki?
Mr. Czarnecki?
Unfortunately, I would need to talk to our engineer about it, who's actually preparing for, and I apologize he's not here, he's preparing for a court appearance tomorrow, so he's prepping for that.
Okay.
But I'll have to get back to you.
Can you have him or have someone get back to Mrs. Showmaker?
I just want to make sure that
There
that's...
is no paving, repaving work going on at this point in time. We have not awarded the contract.
Right. So
Right,
maybe
it's
that's what they have
probably
done. They've
prep
prepped work, because it's a mess. Okay.
Any other comments on consent agenda items? Any-
Are we going to take
Hold on
separate-
1 second, Mrs. Showmaker.
Tim Gillen from CME Associates for Cranberry Road. That is part of the Colts Neck sanitary sewer installation project. And yes, that road has been torn apart and is being patched by the contractor for the developer. So that is being repaired. It's independent of your other contract relative to the paving road by Earl Asphalt.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions on consent agenda? All right, we don't have any add-ons, if you will, for consent agenda, do we?
There's an add-on.
Hold on 1 second.
There is an add-on agenda, not sure if they're appropriate for a consent agenda, but there is an add-on agenda.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we would normally actually have these under the consent agenda items, if you will. So let me just call everyone's attention. 9B41 is the award of a contract to the Senior Center, Americans with Disability Compliance and Elevator. We've already talked about 9B42 not being necessary because it is a duplicate item. With respect to 9B43, there is a resolution we have a copy of appointing Labor Council, Sorensi and Hollenbach. 9B44, appointing our Affordable Housing Planner, Birdsell Engineer. 9B45, the appointment of Utility Engineer, CME Associates. And 9B46, the appointment of Consulting Engineer, CME Associates. We also need to formally remove from the agenda 9B8, which is a right-of-way easement in the Monmouth County Fire Academy. So I'd first ask for a motion for these items as just noted herein to be added to the agenda.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments with respect to the add-ons? This is not a vote on the items, just to add them to the agenda.
Mayor, one quick comment, if I may. I'd like to make sure that we have a separate vote on 9B39 and 9B43.
Of course, 30, we may have some more, so 39. All right, any other comments on adding these to the agenda? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, let's just have a motion to table 9B18, please.
May I make that
Mayor.
motion?
We have a motion and a second by Mrs. Showmaker. Any comments on tabling 9B18? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, what we can do, I know there has been a request for a separate vote on 9B, make sure I get all my notes right, 9B39, and a separate vote on 9B43. Any other requests for a separate vote? Any other requests for a separate vote? All right, accordingly, I'd ask member of the council to make a motion on all consent agenda items, including the add-ons, excluding Articles 39 and 43.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments on all items excluding 39 and 43? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, with respect to 9B39, this is the appointment of tax appeal attorney. We have a resolution, and ask the council to introduce a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to motion that we appoint the law firm of Skoloff and Wolf as our tax appeal attorney.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second, Mayor.
We have a second by the deputy mayor. Okay, under remarks or comments? Any comments or remarks?
Mayor, only one if I may. I think I brought this up, and it was brought to my attention that the firm of Skoloff and Wolf does not want to have the residential and the commercial separated. as far as, oh, I'm sorry, yeah. We're talking about that, right? Yeah, I'm going to make sure I don't get it.
Yeah.
My only concern is that their hourly rate of $175 concerns me. I did speak to the township manager. I did review numerous of the old contracts that we had, and I would be remiss if I did not mention that in those contracts, it did state, as all of these that I have, everyone that I went through here, states in there that in addition to their hourly rate, and by the way, Skoloff and Wolf, it does state in there that our services would be provided on a blended hour rate of $175 per hour, regardless of the attorney working. As such time as our services exceed 28 hours, should that occur during the contract, it would be necessary to arrange an appropriate supplemental appropriation to cover additional services required to relieve us. I almost feel like we're doing an open-end contract that we're
Mrs.
not...
Shoemaker, if I can interrupt for one moment, and I apologize. We got a call from the from the recorders upstairs. They can't hear you. If you would just
It
kind
must
of
be this...
maybe pull it a little closer or buddy up with the other one,
Short of
perhaps.
eating it, I don't know what to do, guys. Because you can hear it on TV.
Continue. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My only concern, once again, is that under their contract, and I did take the time, and I have reviewed all of these contracts. Are we good?
Go ahead.
We're good. Is that I'm concerned with the hourly rate, and that we're going into this as an open-end contract. It does say not to exceed $75,000, but what it at an hourly rate of $175 at a blended hourly rate. But what it does say, if they exceed 428 hours, and should that occur during the contract year, it would be necessary to arrange an appropriate supplemental appropriation to cover additional services required or to relieve us as counsel. I just went on the record that I'm very uncomfortable with this particular firm because of that. And if you go through all the other ones, everyone else, I know, Ms. Dalton, you had made a remark about Mr. Gannon's firm and their, I'll use blended hourly rate because of their paper services and such. But when you go through here, every one of these, they all added extended circumstances where they did charge for postage, faxing, printing, photocopying, and every firm did in our packet. So, I mean, I just went on the record that I'm very concerned that this is going to cost the township, you know, more money than we're anticipating with this firm. It's not concise as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. All right. Any additional comments on this particular appointment? Go right ahead, sir.
I would like to, we spoke about it in depth, and we interviewed all the tax appeal attorneys, and we thought that this was at least a once every 10-year occurrence. So in order to protect the citizens of Howell as best we could, we thought we would hire what we thought was the best law firm out there. It's one of the reasons I asked the question to the appraisal company and Tom Lenahan before, tax assessor, about the commercial. Because I know a lot of commercial entities have attorneys on retainer. They are much more apt to file appeals because they already have attorneys that they pay. Whereas individual residents, if they keep on going, have to take money out of their pocket to appeal. So that's one of the reasons why I asked that question. From speaking to some other towns and some different attorneys, it was of my opinion that more commercial people will appeal to the state than residents will. And I was concerned about them getting their tax assessments lowered, which in turn would raise the residential. So in order to protect the best interests of the residents of Howell, it's why we chose that firm. We had numerous discussions about it in the back, and we were the ones, we all agreed to try to split it up, to try to give the residential appeals to one firm and the commercial to the large firm from North Jersey, and they wouldn't do it. So it was a decision that we came to. that if they wouldn't do it, that we would agree to, talk about giving them all of it.
You have a comment, Mr. Bongiovanni?
I was wondering if Ms. Shoemaker, she said that it was too open-ended, and did you have any suggestions on how to make it less so? Because, they haven't signed a contract yet.
I would just be very careful of the verbiage in there. I mean, if it's going to be, first of all, I don't like the idea of a blended hourly rate. What does that mean?
Well, what that means is that some of the attorneys at that law firm, their hourly rates are in excess of $350 to $400. Saul Wolf, who is the principal of that firm, who came and spoke to us, writes all of the tax books. In fact, he's one of the attorneys who set up the tax court, the Superior Court. So, what we're essentially doing is we're getting Saul Wolf services, and we will get Saul services, which are worth $350 or more an hour for $175 an hour.
Will we pay additional fees for, like paralegals and so on and so forth?
I don't believe there's any paralegal, I don't know about specifically paralegal, I don't recall, I don't have it in front of me, but I know there's no charges for word processing.
Yeah, because it doesn't say specific in there.
There's
Theirs was the only one that wasn't specific on that particular end of it. All the other ones were, but not that one.
Yeah, they didn't have any hourly rates for paralegals, if I can recall.
Yeah, I didn't think they charged for them.
Right.
All right, any other comments?
And I think one of the big factors in choosing Mr. Wolf firm was something that was explained to me, was a commercial entity may go through a 2-year process for their tax appeal. If they win, in that 2-year time frame, or 3-year time frame, whatever it may be, we've already sent the money to the Board of Ed and to the Freehold Regional Board of Ed. If they get their assessment lowered, we can't go back to those Board of Ed and say, give us our 80% back. We foot the bill. So that was one of the deciding factors in us choosing the company that writes the law, to put it, pretty clearly. It was explained to us that Mr. Wolf or someone from his firm has sat on the tax court from its inception. So, yeah, we had tried to split it up, but obviously attorneys didn't want to split it because if they took the commercial, they would be prohibited from representing anybody on a residential side and vice versa.
I have just one other question for Mr. Bongiovanni, and I've reviewed the professional contracts that we've had over the last several years. Many of them have a cap. Is it true that when that cap on occasion has been exceeded, the professional has come forward and requested an additional appropriation?
Yes, and there normally would be granted if they could just show what the reason for the additional amounts are. I don't think any professional could assume these kind of responsibilities with a cap that meant no matter what the situation is, and tax appeals would be something where it's got to be based on volume. I mean, so they're guessing, and they're making a good guess that based on their prior experience that 70, whatever the amount is, I think it might be in the resolution, whatever the amount is, I know it's in their, it's going to be in their contract if it's not in the resolution. And they're just letting you know, essentially, that once we've reached that limit, we may have to come back if things turn out, for the worse in that regard. But for every tax appeal that they're defending, I know from personal experience, you stand a good chance of saving a lot of money, unlike some other legal services that you just have to do just to protect, from losing something. Here you're actually gaining something if the appeal is successful in the right case. I mean, obviously, he's also there to give advice to make sure certain cases aren't appealed, so.
Okay. Any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, this is a roll call with respect to Article 9B 39, appointment of tax appeal attorney. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Shoemaker?
No.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, the next separate item was 9B 43. This is the appointment of a labor counsel, Skorinsky and Hollenbach. I'd ask for a motion, please.
I'll move, Mr. Mayor, that we appoint Skorinsky and Hollenbach as our labor counsel for this year.
We have a motion. We need a second, please.
Second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Under remarks, any comments or remarks? Any comments or remarks? Mr. Walsh?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, my only concern with this firm is that this firm also represents Howell Township schools. And I'm just concerned with if there's, and maybe Mr. Bongiovanni can answer this, I'm concerned with the conflict. I mean, after all, we just listened to Mrs. Dixell and several other residents talking about our taxes, and this firm represents Howell Township schools. How is that going to, reflect on negotiations?
Well, if it's not a conflict for their firm to represent both entities, and it isn't, I don't see how it could be a conflict for us. You could look at it as being possibly a real benefit because they'll have access to information even though it's confidential, that they can't help but absorb their expertise on the issues involving Board of Ed matters. That should inure to your benefit, I would think.
So you say it would benefit the community to have this firm as our labor council?
That's a decision for the council, obviously, but I'm just saying, rather than it being any kind of a conflict, if anything, I would say it would just be an advantage. I know it's not a legal conflict for the attorney to hold.
So there's no legal conflict. Does that answer your question?
I just thought morally. I know it's not a legal conflict, or they wouldn't have applied.
Any other questions or comments? I just have a couple of brief comments on this, and the council spent considerable time reviewing a number of firms, and I think we had very good dialogue and debate, and really reviewed the credentials of every firm. I have a couple of reasons. I'm going to vote no on this particular applicant, if you will, and I shared it with my colleagues when we talked about it in closed. I am concerned, quite frankly, because while I have great respect for our contemporaries on the Board of Education, and we have a fabulous education system, my son's in the first grade, my daughter will start kindergarten next year, and I couldn't think of a better place for them to get educated. But I am certainly not completely thrilled with some of the lack of progress that has been achieved at the collective bargaining table with respect to our agreements with the various bargaining groups that we have in Howell Township on the Board of Ed side. Now, I'm not going to second guess our Board of Education members. They do a fabulous service, and I'm sure there are many reasons why, and give and take in bargaining, that some things don't happen. But I'm not been satisfied in seeing what other districts have done in the area and on a statewide basis with respect to a whole variety of concessions. So I've certainly not been enamored, if you will, with the work potentially of this firm, and that's just an observation on my part. I'm also a little bit concerned, quite frankly, with respect to this firm, and certainly don't mean them any disrespect. I'm sure they're all honorable people. In fact, I'm convinced they are. But there has been concern in this municipality of late, particularly with respect to the issue of PACs and wheeling. And unfortunately, one of the principals that came and spoke to us, in fact, was reported in the Asbury Park Press, and it's nothing illegal at all, but was reported as the architect behind the PAC and wheeling situation that was constructed on behalf of the Monmouth County Republicans, quite frankly. And I am a card-carrying, lifelong Republican, very involved in the county organization, but was certainly concerned about the infrastructure and the architecture that was created with respect to this recent issue with regard to PACs and wheeling, and it got tremendous coverage in the newspaper. This firm is involved in county politics, and they're entitled to do it. If we're concerned, as has been talked about in this community this fall and last fall, if we're concerned that PACs are not a good thing and wheeling isn't a good thing, I have a concern about getting engaged with a firm that has gotten some unfavorable publicity because one of their principals, and in fact, was involved in creating the architecture behind facilitating a massive PAC at the county level that was unprecedented with respect to how it was put together. So, and finally, the same firm, I'm sure they did a very adequate, very competent job, was paid by the county most recently to do a review to determine if they needed an in-house lawyer. And it was at some considerable expense and was met with some scrutiny by many activist organizations about whether or not that was money well spent. And while I have great respect for my freeholder friends, I'm concerned about some of the things that have happened with respect to how the legal process has been reviewed. And so I'm not comfortable with this firm. I think there are other firms out there that were of equal competency. I think this is a fine law firm. I'm sure they've got all fine, adequate lawyers. I know they're all people of the highest integrity, and I'm sure the people that will work here will be of high integrity. but all of these collective items make me uncomfortable. And I think that we need to deal with firms, as we have in other instances tonight, that are really external of political engagement, if you will, because I know that's really been something that has been talked about in the past couple of months. So I will vote no in deference to my colleagues. I have great respect for the debate that we had, and I certainly was forthcoming in closed session about my comments. Nothing I've said out here that I didn't certainly explain to anyone, either individually or collectively, when this came up. Any other comments?
I appreciate your comments, Mayor. I think it goes a long way to showing the people of Howell Township that we took no preference to party or political affiliation when we made the decisions we made in the back room. We interviewed a lot of people. We spent a lot of time. We did. We had a lot of very good debate back there, pros and cons.
We certainly did.
I mean, I don't know if anybody was the architect of anything. I don't believe that everything that's written in the newspapers is exactly 100% truth. You know, we did a fair process of interviewing everybody. And I didn't even judge things from the past, as some of the people that were appointed. When it comes to political affiliation and party, I mean, I won't comment on it now. But I think the mayor's comments go to show that we took no preference about who they're associated with. We thought a change was needed. We made recommendations, we had a discussion, and now we'll vote on it. We'll see what happens in a year. One thing about not being affiliated with the party, I think you'll all find out. If they don't do the right job for the citizens of Howell, in my opinion, they'll be wanting out.
You and I will agree on that all the time. All right, any additional comments from the council? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please, on 9B
43.
43. Thank you.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
No.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
No. All right, we'll just get back to our agenda. We have new business. We have... Tell who? Go ahead, do you want to give him?
Mrs. Define, we already voted on you when you were outside.
We're not on the clock, are we?
We appointed CME Associates as utility engineer to consulting engineer, sir.
All right, let me call the council's attention to 9A1. This is amending the land use ordinance titled Installation of Water Meters. This is to be introduced this evening. We'll have a public hearing and an adoption on February the 20th. I'd ask a member of the council to please introduce accordingly. Yep, that's it.
May I make a motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-1 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the January 19th, 07 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after a public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on February 20th, 2007, at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion. We need a second, please.
Second.
Ms. Wallman, would you please read the title of the ordinance or title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 entitled Land Use as it affects the installation of water meters.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, 9A2. This is amending Chapter 198 entitled Mini Bikes to provide for penalties and violations. This evening is the introduction. There'll be a public hearing and adoption on February 20th. Member of the council, please proceed.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-2 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 1/1907 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on February 20th, 07 at 7:30 prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion. We need a second, please.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Wallman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 198 entitled Mini Bikes to provide for penalties for violation thereof.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, 9A3. establish a bus stop along Route 9 North in the area of Northwoods Place. Member of the council.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-3 on first reading by title and order the same to be published in full in the 11907 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title. That'll be further considered for final pass at the public hearing in a meeting of the Township Council to be held on 2/20/06 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time, municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Wellman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, establishing a bus stop along Route 9 North in the area of Northwoods Place.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, just let the record reflect that we moved all of the resolutions that included the 9C items. Okay, just want to make sure that you recorded that, Ms. Woolman? Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, just call everyone's attention, please, to Article 10 of our agenda. Under discussion items, Mr. Chinyetsky, you mentioned you wanted 2 minutes to talk about scheduling for drafts of the municipal budget. What do you have for us?
Yes. Mayor, Finance Officer and I met, and we would like to schedule three workshops, special meeting workshops, not on a regular agenda, to start working on a budget with the council. And we were wondering if we can perhaps agree on some dates, or at least for the first date.
What do you have in mind?
Okay. Okay, well, we're thinking, how is everyone for, last year we did this on Saturday mornings. We thought we would try to do one Saturday morning only and kind of spread the other two out in the evenings. So the three we had tentatively come up with and would be February 10th from 9 to noon, which is a Saturday, February 21st, which is a Wednesday, following a regular council meeting from 6:30 to 10:30, and then March 13th, which would be a Tuesday in March, where we don't have a public participation meeting scheduled. We would have that meeting that night.
All right, so you mentioned 2/10. What was the second date?
2/21.
2/21?
All right, and 3/13.
And 3/13, those are all Saturdays, or just,
No,
just the first one?
There's just one Saturday.
So just the Saturday, the 10th?
Correct.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the council? I mean, are we at liberty? Do we need to check calendars?
We can have the office call in the morning and poll council on those dates, not to put you on the spot right now if you don't have your calendars.
I don't like going out to March 13th, to tell you the truth. Let's get the budget done.
Well, we just wanted to get the dates in case, we need them. Perhaps, Jeffrey, you can comment on the timelines that we're under, statutorily.
There's a calendar that the state publishes as far as introduction, February 10th, adoption by March 20th. The state doesn't follow that calendar. They don't even release the state aid on time. So it isn't followed. Certainly, if you want to work on that, it just means many more Saturdays, many more nights. You want to load it in, that's council's pleasure. I mean, I'll be here when council wants me here as far as doing the budget. It's just a matter of do you want it done by February 10th or by March? You're going to have to put in perhaps the 3 Saturdays in February to do it, or March. And the state's not going to give you an attaboy for it.
Right, we can't adopt till the state releases state aid figures.
When did they release them last year?
We can hurry to introduce, but still we'll have to hold back on adoption. Last year, we didn't hear about state aid till when?
State aid did not, last year with the sales tax, state aid did not come in until April. We actually had adopted a budget on the last week in June before the state was even ready to certify tax rates. So we were early, last year, having finally completed the budget process in June. The state, and it really has been a long-standing problem, the state is not, disposed to do what they're supposed to do as far as getting their budget in place and getting the state aid in place for the town to do it. We now have proposals at the state level over this property tax aid. I would not recommend that you go and introduce once you introduce the budget, you have a clock ticking. You have 28 days you must adopt. Or at least have the public hearing on it and wait for the state to tell you when you can have an adoption. I wouldn't recommend you be in a big hurry until you find out just what kind of legislation, if any, is going to come out of this state aid relief, because we might be sitting here, red-faced over, well, we should have waited and seen what came along.
How about we recommend this as a potential starting point, the council's pleasure. Perhaps we lock into at least February 10th and February 21st. Let's see what progress we make on those two dates, and then pending the outcome of those meetings, we can determine if more meetings are needed. It's a starting point?
That's fine with me, man.
Okay. So we're looking at 2/10 and 2/21, and 2/10 would be Saturday, and 2/21 is a Wednesday?
Correct. It would be a day after a council meeting.
Mr. Filiotto, can you call down to the state and do something about this? Just checking.
I'd like to, but I don't think I have enough pull to get them to move faster.
All right, so you'll get us the particulars. Now, at least in my judgment, for whatever it's worth, we're having our first meeting on the 10th. I know I can't speak for the rest of the council, but I'm going to want to see something in advance of the meeting so that, do a little prep work so that when we come in, we've got some handle on what's what. So when will we have, and it certainly can't be the 9th, but when might we have some worksheets to take a look at?
Maybe the 8th.
That's the day you're going to tell us when the park's going to be built, too, right?
Right.
Worksheets have been worked on. They're not ready for presentation yet. Certainly, they will be ready probably within the next week or two. As far as appropriations, revenue will take a little bit longer. Of course, I am working on the annual financial statement right now, and that's going to drive the revenue. But I will have some worksheets for appropriations perhaps early February, so you have time to look at it and digest it.
All right, so you'll confirm 2/10 and 2/21. Anything else on that point?
Just, Mayor, slightly different from last year. What we're going to do, the department heads are working on PowerPoint presentations, and they're collecting statistical data, quantitative data, and the point here is for them to show you where they think the department is heading, where customer services are needed. So the idea isn't to, the point is that we can go through this a little faster because we want them to tell you basically what they see happening and what trends are happening in their departments. But the actual any sort of budget cuts or adjustments, I'll come to council with an overall budget.
Great. All right, 10-1, we have a discussion on alternate members of the Farmers Advisory Committee. I wasn't aware of any of these items, so I'm not sure where these had come from or what the background is. So I'm going to turn it to you, Mr. Chinyetsky.
Mayor, this was some housekeeping that's sort of been holding back because of the new year, not being able to introduce new things and things piling up. But there was a request from the Farmers Advisory Committee and the Preservation Task Force that the ordinance be amended for each of those to create 2 alternate seats.
Okay. So what's the pleasure of the council?
Fine with that?
All right, so
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, I think just from a procedural perspective, we would need to, the Farmers Advisory, I don't recall, is this a resolution committee or ordinance-driven committee?
It's an ordinance.
So it's an ordinance-driven committee. So we would need to direct you to craft an ordinance creating the position of alternate members. I guess we'd have to do these on a staggered basis, which is what we've historically done when we've added these. All right, so does the council agree we want to add by way of ordinance 2 alternate positions to the Farmers Advisory Committee? Just a quick straw poll. Yes?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Mrs. Showmaker? All right, Mr. Chinyetsky, would you work with the appropriate people to have that amended? And then, did we get enough applications to go through? Are there people who applied for Farmers Advisory that didn't get appointed? Okay.
Sure, Mr. Costigan's got plenty of people in mind.
Okay. All right, that's 10-1. With respect to 10-2, it says here that we're going to talk about the Ordinance Review Committee.
Okay,
So what do you have for us, Mr. Chinyetsky?
Deputy Mayor Walsh asked that we list this item for discussion. The Ordinance Review Committee was in existence. It exists not by ordinance, but by resolution.
Yes.
A copy of that is in your packet. And really, it's any direction or pleasure of the council in terms of reinstituting this, changing its focus, what have you, would be open to hearing about. I had issued a memo, it's not in your backup, but I got it to you a few months ago in response to Councilwoman Showmaker's request as to what is the proper role of advisory committees under the council manager plan. And basically, I just think it's important to recognize that any committees that are created by council are an arm of the council, and council's role is to set policy. So any committees that council wants to set up, such as this, the idea is that they're to help you in specific areas of policy. And typically under the council manager plan, going back to its foundations, these committees would be chaired or led by a member of the council, or even just consist of 2 members of the council. And as towns have gotten larger, like as ours, you also rely on volunteers. But still, there's a member of the governing body who provides a hinge between the volunteers and a governing body, again with the idea that it's the council who has ultimate responsibility for setting policy in a community, and they look to these committees for help. But they are not, the point being here, that I may be beating to death, is that they're not an administrative arm of the township. Okay.
When we originally put the Ordinance Review Committee together, and I, in fact, was the one that suggested it, I think what happened was their direction got diluted by no fault of their own, but I think of a lack of ongoing clarity in terms of our expectations. And I think the original intent was the governing body has, as a manager, we now have a deputy manager, as new ordinances come up, we're pretty comfortable that we'll have the right amount of people looking at it if it goes through department heads or what have you, and it's open to the public for hearings. Our concern, as Mr. Librio might recall, people would come up and introduce issues like the swine ordinance. You know, there's a law on the books in the state of New Jersey that the Senate president wants removed that says that, quote, no idiot can vote in the state of New Jersey. You know, it was some obscure law that's on the books, and the Speaker of the Senate recommended that it was insulting to people with mental disability, and it should be revoked. And that was really the intent here originally, was to go back and find things that had been on the books from 1972 that no longer apply to a town that has gone through the metamorphosis that this town has gone through. And so I certainly don't have any objection to putting this back together as long as the governing body is clear with respect to our expectations of what we want the committee to do, because somewhere along the way, the committee got asked to, and I don't know how, and it wasn't their fault, but to look at ordinances that were on the docket for introduction, and then we just had so many chefs in the kitchen that it really got to be a little unruly at times. So as long as we can be clear, at least in my judgment, on what our expectations are of the committee, to go back and look at things that didn't make sense, I think it makes a lot of sense to do this. But I think the mistake we made last time, and we should learn from our former mistakes, is to make sure they know exactly what we asked them to do, so they don't do a whole bunch of work and find out that isn't what we wanted. And I think, as Mr. Librio can tell you, they did a whole bunch of work, and a lot of it went by the wayside. You have a comment?
Yeah, I would like to, for me, it simplifies by saying they need to be an advisory committee, not a policy-making committee.
No question.
Okay? And there's a lot of good advice, especially from what I've seen up here in the last 15 months. There's a lot of good advice that come from other people and some of the advice that's been given to me. And that's fact. I don't feel comfortable saying that, but some of the things that have been said to me up here just weren't right. I mean, some of the things that are in our ordinances just blow me away. You know, 1972, things that don't belong there. I mean, why are these things not removed? Why are they not in sync with some of the other laws we have? I mean, somewhere along the line, either we're going to have professionals do house cleaning, the manager, or hope that some of the citizens in the advisory committee help us to do some house cleaning and get our house in order.
I think that's what, if I can butt in right
Mrs.
there, I think that's exactly what the advisory committee, we were hoping that would be done. One of the things that the point that I think that we really miss as a collective body is that our ordinances should be a strong overlay for our master plan to control what does and does not go on in our community. And I think that from my perspective, I was hoping that the advisory committee would not go through and recraft some of the new ordinances that have been recently on the book, but that, like you said, the ordinances that have been on there forever and ever that have changed. The community has changed. The geography of the land has changed. We have tremendous growth, and the ordinances need to be tightened up. And that's what I'm hoping that this review ordinance committee will work at.
Okay, any other comments, Mr. Stolten or Mr. Howell?
No.
No.
Okay. So it sounds like is there consensus we want to reinstitute this committee?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to advertise, it would strike me, like we've done for all these committees, for people who are interested in
Did
participating.
we advertise for it in 2003?
We did. In '03, we absolutely did. Yeah, we took applications.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But the idea would be to start with the resolution again.
No question.
You're going to do the resolution route. Now, just to clarify the intent, as you all saw in your packets, if you had time to look it over, and I would understand what this kind of thing, you didn't get to it, but one of the things was the mission statement, and said the goal or mission of the committee was to analyze, review, and classify various ordinances within the township consistent with the above stated disciplines. So you pointed out some different disciplines, different areas that people should be interested in. And then said study shall include recommendations to update, revise, streamline, or otherwise change the current codes of the township. If you give them a kind of a,
You're right.
you know,
That was the red herring, because the language was inconsistent with the intent. And
well, the issue would be, what would be the intent of this board, though?
Well, let me, as not to work the issue here, my recommendation is that perhaps offline, members of the council have discussion with Mr. Chernietsky about making sure we're all comfortable with the clarity, because we could probably wordsmith to death for the next 2 hours. So unless anyone disagrees, maybe everybody independently give a call to Mr. Chernietsky, give him your sense. I think the collective feedback I'm hearing is advisory body, take a look at older ordinances that might need to be updated and tightened and cleaned, and we don't want someone to come back and, part of the issue, and this isn't a criticism of the Ordinance Review Committee, they did an overwhelming job. They actually gave us written ordinances ready to be introduced. And, our concern was, well, we have a township attorney to do that, and, we're not interested really at that level of detail. So as to make sure we don't waste their time, because they put a lot of time in, we got to make sure this is clear. So we'll all individually call Mr. Chernietsky, give him our feedback, and then you gentlemen will come back to the council with a draft resolution. You should simultaneously, it sounds like, advertise for committee appointments. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, so you got your cool on that one. All right, 10-3, Budget Review Committee. Again, I'm not aware of this
Sure.
one, so.
Yeah, again, this was requested by the deputy mayor to put on for discussion. This is something that is not currently on the books. It would likewise require a similar resolution to craft a mission, and at this point, we're just looking for some guidance from the council as a whole, where they'd like to, there's an interest in this and where they'd like to take it.
Who wants to, under discussion, who would like to open this up?
Well, Mr. Walsh, if you could just explain what you're looking for this advisory committee to do as a budget committee. Enlighten us.
I would like to have some different eyes on the budget, some, there's a lot of resources of talent in Howell Township and outside of Howell Township. I would like to see a committee of 5 people, which I would be glad to be one of those 5 people, to have access to some of the record keeping, the budgets, and have some different eyes and some different views on how maybe we can best save the citizens of Howell some money. I've been speaking to some people in elected office in some other towns, and they've been running some ideas by me, but I can't tell you that I understand them all 100%. I mean, to sit down and kind of mini workshop it with 4 other people who are knowledgeable about numbers and have different information in front, I think I can come with a more, an answer that may better help the people of Howell in a lot of different areas. Some of the areas I know can't be, altered whatsoever. But speaking to other elected officials, I mean, other towns do some things different than we do. And it saves the taxpayers money.
Listen, if we're looking to save it, I mean, anything to save the taxpayers' money is a good thing.
I mean, I sat through the budget process a couple of years ago. You didn't know who I was in the back. I was just a chubby guy in the back with a beard. No one knew who I was. But, I listened to a lot of what went on. And I ran it by some people who I know, pretty intelligent with numbers. I understood a lot of the process. At the time I was involved in the Board of Education's budget meetings. They told me, if you don't like what's going on, to come. So I went there for about 12 weeks in a row, and I listened. And, I absorbed it all. And from Speaker Mr. Filiaccio, I mean, he explains things so well that I don't understand them. And he does. I mean, he does the best he can to try to tell me on a layman's level what is exactly going on. And sometimes I leave and I really don't understand. Our manager told me sometimes I listen with an agenda. So maybe that's not why I understood it all, but it just doesn't sink in. I took it as constructive criticism, Mr. Chernecki. Close.
All right,
but, but for me, that's what, I would just like to take different eyes to try to serve the people as best I could.
All right, so it sounds like what we're looking to do is create a 5-member committee. We need to, again, make sure that, to Mr. Bongiovanni's point, we're very clear with respect to goals, objectives, and what their authority is. We certainly, it never hurts to have more people take a look at the budget, and so it certainly can't hurt. So it sounds like we want a motion to create a committee by resolution. I would again, maybe perhaps just for the benefit of the time and to facilitate the dialogue, perhaps we can either individually call or email Mr. Chernetsky our thoughts, and that you could collectively then pull them all together and put something together for our consideration for the next meeting, and we can then make sure we're comfortable with it. Simultaneously, it sounds like we should begin to advertise. It's a committee like all these other volunteer groups. Let's request, I would imagine we want to get applications. And who knows, we may get some brilliant CPA who lives somewhere in the town that says, sign me up.
All right, Mayor, when I went to
Before I do that, I'm sorry, Mr. Howell, I didn't mean to interrupt. Mrs. Dalton was first. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I just think that we call it, in the packet, it talks about Budget Review Committee. I like it to be a little more expansive and talk about Finance Review Committee, so that it's not just looking at the proposed budget and making recommendations. I think it should be things like looking, an ongoing process. One of the things that I am most interested in are the unexpended funds that are in several of the line items, and I would think that is something that is right up the alley of this committee to take a look at and say, we've had these things on the books for 10 years, we haven't spent the money, and maybe we could put it someplace else.
In all due respect, I do think that also falls into the broad category of budget. And I think I have some level of concern, just statutorily, that there's not encroachment onto the day-to-day activities of the finance office or the manager's office in terms of staff requirements, because here again, we work under the direction and policy umbrella of the council. Right. And so when we leave here, we work on the agenda that you set for us for the week, and we always have a difficult time with the committees we have, helping them understand that they work with you and not with the staff, although we try to be helpful. I'm just concerned about spreading ourselves too thin, particularly if we're under budget deadlines. So I do think that the notion of a budget review committee can be thought of in terms of, what does the council really need help with in terms of crafting a budget it feels very comfortable with? And I think that's the input that would be most helpful.
I think what we have to be conscious of, and we're going to need your help on this, Mr. Chernetsky, and I don't think it's anyone's intent, and I haven't talked to anybody up here about this other than tonight. First I've talked about it. But I don't think anyone wants to deputize a volunteer so they could just march into Mr. Filiatro's office anytime they want, pull out their Glee Club card and say, I'm on the Budget Committee, open the books.
No.
So I think we're looking for a committee to operate as a committee, taking very specific direction from the council, and not in any way, shape, or form interrupting the day-to-day operations of the council. They act as a committee of the whole. They will take direction from the council from time to time, but we're going to need to make sure you know the nuances of the right protections and language that should be put in their charter, mission statement, if you will, as to avoid any ambiguity. Does everyone agree with that?
Absolutely.
Hold on
Yeah.
1 second, Mrs. Showmaker. Mr. Howell, you had a
Mayor,
comment.
the only thing I was going to say is, when I went to the League of Municipalities convention and the classes for newly elected officials, there's a woman from the state, Mrs. Tripodi, who spoke about these budget review committees, and she said more and more towns are actually putting these committees together, and you can reach out to her, and they actually have like a template
Okay.
of what you can do. And, you know, she explained quite a few things, you know, with the budget, 85% of it's contractual, don't even bother with it. Don't have it sitting in front of you because you can't touch it.
Well,
You know,
and-
so there were things that she put out, and she said there's never a problem when anyone wants to call her office, and she will give you the guidelines that they found that have worked in other towns.
Okay. You have a comment, Mr. Chinesky?
And it's not only in terms of saving money, but it's also in terms of adding value. I think a committee like this can be very helpful in letting the council know or test some issues of where service deliveries can be approved or adjusted or redirected. So it's not just, you know, what we save, but how much value we add on the
Good.
other hand.
Okay. All right, so the takeaway here is you're going to work on a resolution. Members of the council will individually get you thoughts and comments either over the phone or on email. You'll work with whatever staff members are appropriate to put something together. We'll simultaneously, through the clerk's office, advertise for positions, 5 members. We'll leave it to you to get our comments about, is it 1 year, is it 2 year, whatever details, let's not work it here, whatever details and comments you get from everybody. We're all in agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor,
Anything? Yeah, go
Mayor,
ahead,
I'd like
Mr.
to
Howell.
just go back. I was looking at the letter that we got concerning the Farmers Advisory Committee, and the final paragraph of that letter was also asking that we add 2 additional alternates to the Preservation Task Force.
Okay.
That wasn't listed on discussion items, but Mr. Costigan, did you want to have us act on that right away?
Yes, sir. All right. So thank you, Mr. Howell. Does anyone have an objection to simultaneously doing the preservation, adding 2 people as well?
No.
Okay. Mr. Chunetsky, I think you have our direction. All right, I just want to take 2 minutes to share with the council just some thoughts with respect to our continuing effort to make these meetings move as efficiently as they can, and looking at the time, this is a good night. I've tried to be a student here of Robert's Rules of Order. My wife makes fun of me. I read this book quite a bit. But what I'm going to attempt to ask, and I'm going to ask that Mr. Chernetsky or Mr. Bongiovanni, someone kind of be a timekeeper, if you will, just on an informal basis to help us kind of keep ourselves in check. In the Robert's Rules of Order, it suggests that as it relates to a particular item that we're debating, that a speaker speak no more than twice on that same issue, and that we attempt to contain that debate, if you will, to about 10 minutes when a person needs to be recognized. So if Mrs. Showmaker wants to be recognized, she could talk at least twice for about 10 minutes, and then if for some reason we need to go beyond that, we as a collective body say we want to extend the debate. And I don't think we're going to run into that often, but I don't want to pull it up one night when we're working on something and make it appear as if I'm trying to ride the agenda through more quickly. I want to mention it here now and get your feedback so that if I do try and move us in a facilitative kind of direction, no one says, well, wait a minute, you never told me it was 10 minutes and 2 times, and I'm not suggesting we do this to limit our debate. We all know, as Mr. Walsh and Mrs. Showmaker can attest, that we're going to be here some nights with 57 things on the agenda, and we're not going to be able to get through them unless we among ourselves attempt to be disciplined. So I want to be candid and raise this to everyone. You don't even have to comment tonight if you want to think about it, but we do have bylaws as a municipality that we adopt every year. We did it again this year, that we use Robert's rules. So I really want to attempt to use them as a way to make this a more productive meeting. Mr. Bongiovanni, you want to add a comment?
One of the rules, I think, states that, I think on motions, that the person who makes the motion...
Speaks first.
And also gets to speak an extra time.
That is correct.
So, I'm unfamiliar with the 10-minute rule, though, in any of these things. Are you talking about, it just gives you a time frame to be... Yeah.
For example, in rules of debate, if you will, according to Robert's rules, is each member can speak for 10 minutes on each turn, unless the Assembly has adopted rules that state another amount of time. And I'm not suggesting if we're in the middle of a great debate that we sound the buzzer and say it's 10 minutes. Obviously, we're going to be reasonable among one another, but to the extent we can try and time clock ourselves, I think it will give the public more time. We won't be doing clock management, if you will, and running into situations where, as some of us can attest, we've been here at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's not practical. Not that we're not committed to being here, because I'm sure we'll all stay here all night. But at some point, from a physical and a mental perspective, you know, we're not operating in a way that's beneficial in the town. So I'm not trying to make a big ordeal out of it. I just don't want anyone to be surprised if, as I'm chairing the meeting, I say, let's get back to discipline, and we recommend we follow Robert's rules, and so let's stick to this. Anyone disagree? Please be candid. You, any issues?
You said we don't have to comment on that, we can go home and think about it.
Good. Well, then
That's exactly what I'm going to do.
Go home and think about it. Mrs.
I'm
Shoemaker?
going to read the book, too, while I'm there.
I'll give you my copy. You can borrow it.
I have one at home.
All right. Anyone have any issues with this on the surface?
No, Mayor.
Okay. You have a comment, Mr. Cherniatsky?
Mayor, since you raised the topic, and we have I know we have a list of policy issues we're exploring, and Councilwoman Shoemaker had requested some council protocols, and we're sort of waiting to get past the traffic thing before I bring that up with council, but ICMA, the International City Managers Association, publishes some best practices. May not necessarily be in Robert's rules, but a couple of things if I can bring up that would help maybe facilitate things. One is, in the past, when things were asked to go for discussion, it would either be asked from the dais, or I might get a phone call, and I sort of felt awkward, Mayor, that you said, you know, you weren't aware of these things. Perhaps the most appropriate way in the future is to say if we want to discuss something or take the governing body's time, and I think this is in Robert's rules, that it be done by motion.
Agreed. You are in fact correct.
And we've been sort of informal about this in the past, and I apologize because I've allowed it to get even more informal.
It's a fair point. Okay. What else?
The other point, too, is, you know, our code book sets a 3-minute limit on public participation. And, you know, it's awkward to stick within that, but perhaps if the mayor you'd like, the staff can let you know when someone's perhaps reached 5 minutes. And if you feel that the list of people waiting to speak on a subject is long enough, that, you know, council make a motion to allow the individual to continue to speak for some more time. And I particularly think about that for ordinances, when the list is like really long. So something to consider.
It's a very good idea, and we should all think about it. Okay, we have our workshop meeting for the month of February on the 6th in these chambers, 6:30. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, there's one more. There was a letter from the prosecutor requesting, yeah, you have it, requesting alternates.
Okay.
If council would be inclined to act on that.
All right, so we have in front of us, we do correspondence from our new municipal prosecutor, Mr. Grisanti. He's requesting alternate prosecutors, I guess, in the event he is either unavailable or has a conflict. And this would be Mark Cassidy of Brick, James Butler of Asbury Park, Kathleen Sheedy of Oakhurst, Teresa Condrip Coyle of Freehold, Stephen Rubin, who actually was a former prosecutor in Howell, of Oakhurst, and Pasquale Mena of Red Bank. I'd ask someone to please make a motion to accept these as alternate prosecutors.
Mayor, I'll make the motion.
Just have a comment on that.
Okay.
I saw what he prepared. Did Mr. Grisanti amplify that with any notion that they would be paid in addition to what he's being paid, or that they would just be permitted to show in his appearance, you know, as a substitute?
He called today and asked if his request be authorized by the council.
I think if you're authorizing him they can appear in his stead, but at no additional rate of...
All right, we got, who motioned?
Mayor, on that, I'll rescind my motion.
No, let's just open up discussions. Let's make a motion, and then we'll add whatever caveats are
'Cause
necessary.
I know from experience that the way it's often done is one prosecutor, and all these people are prosecutors in various different towns. One will cover his calendar, and then the other person will cover his calendar. So, and many times it was done on an informal basis. I think it's good to do it on a more formal basis, but I think that normally the way that's done is, I'll substitute for you, you substitute for me. If Mr. Grisanti has another idea that they should be paid in addition, I think you need to know that.
Yeah, you made a motion, let's second it, and then under...
Second.
Remark, we have a motion and a second, under comments. Sounds like what I'm sorry, Ms. Dalton, go ahead. Please.
I actually spoke to Mr. Grisanti about that issue, about appointing municipal alternate prosecutors, and it is without any additional compensation. If there's a fee, it would be from him to the other prosecutor. My only comment is that I'm not so sure that we need to limit it to those prosecutors on the list. I was under the impression that if you are a municipal prosecutor in the county, you can cover for any other municipal prosecutor, and I don't know that we necessarily need that resolution at all.
You could be very well, you may be correct. Historically, what was explained to us in the past, last year, the Howell firm was the prosecutor, and there were any number of partners. It was easier because it was one firm, and we listed them all. One of the things that I know historically that we had gotten from the court administrator in the past was just because of the way they're attempting to operate the court and what have you, they like to know who the people are and get some sense of what their processes are and when they meet. If what you're suggesting is the law and this is unnecessary, great. If we want to go through with it, it's fine too. I don't know what's required. We really got to defer to you, Mr. Bongiovanni.
Well, I think that the clerk, I think the way it's going to work is that to take a little bit of the burden off of the prosecutor. He's not going to be calling up these people, say, you cover, you cover. You give the list to probably Dominic Pondaco or the assistant administrator there, and they'll call up somebody from the list. So I think your point is well taken. It doesn't have to necessarily be any of these people,
Let me suggest this then. Perhaps, maybe Mr. Chernetsky and/or Mr. Bongiovanni just makes a phone call to Mr. Grisanti and clears up. Do we really need to act on this? If we do, great. If you're comfortable, you want us to do it for some specific reason, we're happy to do it. But we think there might be a reason not to have to do it.
I guess
you can report to us at the next meeting.
I guess the only reason I could really think about it is these might be the prosecutors that he's agreed to substitute for, and that's why he knows they'll be available for him. I guess
Sure.
that's one way of thinking of it.
All right, so are we comfortable withdrawing the motion in the second, directing Mr. Bongiovanni to make a phone call? I don't think there's any is there any urgency in this action?
Yeah, we
There's
actually got
urgency.
Got a phone call. I was just advised, making sure it was on the agenda and before the council.
We asked that you adopt this list. We called this morning.
So much for advance
Can I ask
notice.
something?
Perhaps if we authorize the list.
But if we adopt this list, can we add to this list? We're not saying that's all.
Well, I think maybe the problem
What's
is
the big deal?
Perhaps you can stipulate that it be that the rate be as approved for the prosecutor and only...
Well, I think maybe the problem is we have court tomorrow, and maybe he has a conflict tomorrow.
Well, we can adopt that list now and add to it, that's all I'm saying.
All right, so
Make a motion that it would, and this can be like something memorialized at the next meeting, that this will serve as a list of substitute prosecutors to be amended by the council, and that there will be no further compensation than the prosecutor's current salary for this.
Okay, does the maker of the motion agree to the contents of the recommendation?
So moved.
And Mrs.
Second.
Dalton, you agree? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Mr. Chernetsky, is there anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Just for the council's attention, Tuesday, February 6th, 6:30, we have our workshop meeting. 7:30, we will open it up to the public. We have our public participation meeting in these chambers on February 13th, 7:30 p.m., and we have our regular meeting on February the 20th, at 6:30 PM, and it would appear that as if we'll have a budget meeting, time to be determined, on the 21st. Any other business from the council?
Saturday.
Wasn't that Saturday, February 10th?
Saturday, February 10th.
Wasn't there also going to be a February 21 as well?
And 21.
Yeah, that's why I said that,
That's
February.
Wednesday.
Okay, Wednesday, okay. Any other business from the council? Hearing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.